A Capitol employee who managed to escape the House chambers described the troubling scene to reporters.
I saw all of them. About 400 to 500 completely deranged people just rambling on about guns, the military, and money.
Investigators say the lunatics, many of whom are believed to suffer from severe personality disorders, have locked themselves in the chambers for hours now, with no clear purpose or reasoning.
I looked at one of them right in the eyes, and it was like he was empty on the inside, devoid of any emotion or feeling. It was horrifying. It's only a matter of time before they do something that really hurts someone.
We believe these men to be manipulative and extremely dangerous. Luckily, they are also very disorganized, and there is a chance they may never be able to ever take any action at all. For more on this developing story, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Well, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash, and you can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And of course, I got to tell everyone as well about how the government punishes you for keeping your wealth in cash or in a savings account through inflation, which is a tax on savers. It's the systematic erosion of your wealth, but your savings account, it's got the same amount of money in it, even if yesterday something was $10 and today's $15. The founders of Noble Gold have more than 20 years of combined experience in buying gold and silver. Gold's exciting because it can be a hedge against inflation, remain steady when inflation is on the rise and the dollar's in turmoil. To find out more, go to noblegoldinvestments.com/GML. That's noblegoldinvestments.com/GML. Why GML? Well, that's because Charlie and I have a podcast that we do every single day of the week when we want to, called Good Morning Liberty. I know right now we're called Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live network. You can also find our podcast, Good Morning Liberty, on your favorite podcast app. You can even join the Fed Haters Club by going to joingml.com. It's only $7 a month, And just if you care about the future of human civilization and individual liberty, stuff like that, you can go to joingml.com and help us keep fighting the commies, doing the Lord's work every single day of the week. That's Good Morning Liberty. What's up, man?
Thirsting for Liberty.
That's my Discord name.
It is.
Find me on the Discords. I don't think that's something you can do, but whatever.
I think so. You can type in somebody's username.
I still don't know how Discord works, honestly.
Yeah, but we're on there.
Yeah, you should go to joingml.com. That'll bring you to our Discord channel, and you can pay as little as $7 a month so you can hang out with the Fed Haters Club.
That's up to $7 now?
$7. Inflation. It's still not even consistent with inflation over the amount of time,
should be 10 minimum.
Probably should be up to 10 by now.
Yeah.
But since you're only here like half the time, there's a discount.
$3.
A discounted rate since you're the
average family of four can save $3 a month.
Yes.
On your Fed Haters Club membership.
It should be, the market price is 10, but we've marked it down to 7. So you're getting a deal right now. So go to joingml.com and join. Yeah. What's up, everyone?
Especially all you ladies out there. They love deals.
They do. And they can tell everyone. So, they're like, oh, hey, I love your Discord channel that you're on. I'm like, oh yeah, thanks. I got it for $7. It was 10.
30% off.
Yeah, 30% off at joingml.com. Be the first thing they say.
Where'd you get that Discord channel?
So we were talking beforehand about there wasn't a lot of things that happened over the weekend that I saw that I cared about all that much in government. Government's basically not doing anything right now, which is kind of like how I like my government.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything. The presidential candidates have been out there on the campaign trail. Trump was in Detroit And Biden was out there in Hollywood
trying to get all that campaigning in before prison.
Yes, you got to do that. And I think Biden raised a bunch of money from like rich celebrities over the weekend. Still nowhere close to what Trump has raised in the last month or so. But I saw Jack Black endorse them and gave a little speech and stuff. And he's got pictures out there with Julia Roberts and Obama and Jimmy Kimmel and all these super down to earth, everyday common man type people that he's out there hanging out with.
Yeah.
That are trying to take the focus off the fact that he's not here right now.
Is he still lost?
He's still, he doesn't know where he is whatsoever.
Did you see the Babylon Bees headline?
Which one?
It was him and Zelensky signing something.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
It said, beware of new scam of scammers taking billions from dementia patients.
Yeah. I saw that. It's a pretty good one. They got some good headlines.
That was really good.
I'm still hearing rumblings that Biden's going to get pulled off the ticket, by the way. I don't know. The most common conspiracy theory right now is that in this debate on June 27th, he's going to bomb so hard that they're going to pull him out right afterwards. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case.
You don't think they're going to pump him full of Adderall?
I think they're going to pump him up. I think they got the drug cocktail worked out just fine. And I don't think it's going to be quite as terrible as what people,
and the doctors are like, this is going to be teetering on the edge of completely wiping this.
He could die on air.
Yeah.
What if he dies on air? The thing is, it has to happen after the Democratic National Convention, because if they do it beforehand, it is a mess. If they do it after he's got the nomination, then the actual committee, about 300 people, can vote for whoever they want to take Biden's place. If they do it beforehand, it is a total mess. They got to actually ask people what they would want, you know? So they got to do it after Biden actually gets the nomination, like a week or two.
When is that?
Within that. I don't know when that is. I'm not real sure. It's coming up, though. It's coming right up. We'll see what happens. Okay, what did happen? This actually happened on, I think, Friday is when this story started to break, and I wanted to talk to everyone about it for a minute because it does pertain a little bit to economics.
August 19th to the 22nd. That's That's a while.
Think he has that long?
I don't know.
We'll see. How about this idea, Charlie? I showed you a little bit about it earlier. Trump apparently floated the idea of getting rid of income taxes for people and for corporations. Getting rid of income taxes.
I love that.
Out of there. You love it. Now he wants to replace it with tariffs. Okay? So there's the catch here. And I even saw a lot of libertarian people out there talking about how terrible of an idea this was. Now, on its face,
this is what the government did for the first 100 years.
I know. so there's like a caveat to this idea, because on its face, it's not possible. It's actually not possible when you look at what the government spends every year, what we're taking in right now, and what we could potentially get off of tariffs, and what it would be like if they
would have to drastically reduce spending.
That's the thing.
Which would be awesome.
You would have to reduce the size of the government back to where it was when we were only doing tariffs and excise taxes. Like that is the catch. It's literally not possible right now unless you drastically reduce the size of the government, because yes, it would lead to massive inflation in prices for everything, because they would have to jack up the tariffs so much. It would be like having a VAT tax, on everything. The prices of everything that we get from other countries would go up. The prices of things in the U.S. would have less competition for cheap goods, and so those would also have their price ceiling raised as well. And so it would lead to a lot of increases in prices. That is true. That is true. The actual answer is the true tax is what the government spends, and either they get it from tariffs and everything gets more expensive, or they do it from income taxes, or they do it from borrowing and we still get the inflation regardless. What our tax is whatever amount of money the government spends every year, because they've got to get it back from you somehow, eventually. That's a Milton Friedman point, and he was very right about that. This is from Salon.
However, would be similar to like a national sales tax, by the way.
Basically.
So like if you don't buy something, you're not getting taxed on it.
Basically.
Your income isn't taxed directly, which I think is a great way to do taxes. That's still a progressive form of tax, by the way, because rich people are going to buy more stuff.
Well,
and the more stuff you buy.
That's not how they look at it anymore. You're right. You're right.
Thank you.
But that's not how it's portrayed to people anymore. They say that the consumption tax is a regressive tax because poor people spend a larger percentage of their total income on goods. And so therefore, they pay a larger percentage of their income in taxes. Even if it's the same percentage for everyone, rich people pay a way lower percentage of their income in taxes. And so therefore, the amount of tax that they pay would be a much lower percentage of their income.
Yeah.
There's always a way to look at something and be a commie afterwards.
I could see how many hoops you were jumping through to get to there.
That's a common hoop right now.
That took over a minute to explain.
Yeah, I know. Here, read that.
Former President Donald Trump on Thursday proposed a new solution to getting rid of the U.S. income tax and all tariff policy. The preemptive Republican nominee told GOP lawmakers. In the meeting, Trump's first visit back to Capitol Hill since Jan 6. Trump attended a Republican pep talk in which he reiterated his belief that import taxes could replace those on income, a policy that reduces the tax burden on wealthy Americans while jacking up the prices paid by consumers, as if wealthy Americans aren't consumers.
Yeah, they are. They are consumers. They still buy things, and also one of the problems is,
can these tariffs just be transitory though?
People could say they could be.
Can we call them transitory tariffs?
People could,
and then it would be fine with the media.
For a few months, yeah.
Okay.
That would be okay. Like when people talk about the corporate income tax, like, well, that's paid by wealthy people, right? No, it's paid by their customers. Like, well, the taxes are paid by the people always. That's how it is. And whatever the amount of money the government spends is what we're being taxed, one way or another.
Mm-hmm. All right. Indeed, tariffs are understood to hike consumer prices because companies pass on the cost of tariffs they pay. What?
Yeah.
I didn't think that this was a thing the media knew.
But they don't pass on the cost of corporate income taxes they pay, just tariffs, because Trump was the tariff guy.
Tariffs currently account for $88 billion of the $4.4 trillion in revenue. I hate that word. The $4.4 trillion in theft the U.S. government steals from you, reported in fiscal year 2023.
Theft? What are you, a communist?
Yeah, it must be.
Sorry, I was doing my Tim Pool impersonation.
Income taxes brought in about 2.2 trillion, so about half of the government's theft.
Yeah.
The Treasury Department reported, which comes from Janet Yellen. So, I mean, take that for what it is. Yeah.
Experts said the proposal will leave many Americans worse off. Broadly substituting tariffs for income tax is a sure way to hit hard, low, and middle-income Americans and reward top. That's what that's
just top.
Top.
Reward top.
Paul Krugman, not happy about this, which is a point in the win column, I think, for Trump. Paul Krugman says Trump has reportedly floated the idea of replacing income taxes. Now, let me explain to you what Trump floating the idea of replacing income taxes is, okay? He's at a table with a bunch of guys. And he's like, we should replace the income tax with tariffs. And then they go on to the next thing. And then that was it.
He probably said we should have someone look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was about it. Like, I guarantee you that was the extent of his floating the policy proposal.
They did this during COVID. There were several times, and I was watching live, where Trump was like, he was talking about sunlight, and he was talking about bleach, and he was talking about other things. But what he said while I was watching it live is that we should have someone look into it. He was basically saying, like, let's not leave anything off the table. Mm-hmm. Okay? We're trying to solve a crisis. Let's have people look into certain things. And everybody took that as Trump said drink bleach.
And they did.
He never said drink bleach.
He was right. They looked into the bleach thing. Turns out it was a bad idea and we didn't do it.
Right.
Problem solved. Yeah.
So more than likely Trump said something to the essence of like, we should look into replacing the income tax with tariffs. Maybe it's not a bad idea.
Krugman said Trump has reportedly floated the idea of replacing income taxes with tariffs. Krugman says, I'll have to write this up in detail, but my first pass estimate is that this would require an average tariff rate of 133%. He would be right about that if it were just a foregone conclusion that we can only spend the amount of money that we spend every year plus an increase every single year on top of that, and that there's no way that the U.S. government could ever decrease the amount of money that they're spending.
Yeah.
Then, it would require a tariff rate of 133%.
So the Biden administration wasted no time in attacking Trump's embrace of inflationary tariffs. Quote, the only people who benefit from this regressive, thoughtless policy are Trump's billionaire donors who get a windfall at the expense of working class Americans. Follow the Capitol Hill meeting. Trump ignored the critics and took to his website, Truth Social, to give himself a pat on the back, writing, "Great meeting with Republican representatives. Lots discussed, all positive, great poll numbers." He said,
Yeah.
which would be a normal tweet.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think he was specifically, that was specifically pertaining to his get rid of the income tax policy proposal.
No.
I think that's just the comments that he had to say after the meeting. But, the thing. So Thomas Massey posted out the most intriguing policy idea from the GOP meeting. Trump briefly floated the concept of eliminating the income tax and replacing it with tariffs. And then he put the emoji where a guy's got a monocle on. He's looking into something, as the emoji that you have. And this is a very important chart that I'm going to give you a little bit bigger version of here in a second. He posts the chart, and it goes from like the beginning of the United States up to the point where the income tax came into play. By the way, also the Fed came into play at the same time. And what you essentially see...
By the way, look how little income tax started out at.
Yeah, not very much at all.
Because remember, they sold you on the idea, especially the first couple of years.
Yeah, it was like...
the idea was that you weren't the income...
Just the top 1%.
You're
Don't worry
going to be
about
paying, quarters of pennies. No worries. This is going to be barely anybody who's going to have to... Basically, they could... The penny that they drop.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to collect. They dropped it. Okay?
My response to this was different from what a lot of other liberty people responded with, like libertarian people responded with. And I just wanted to give you my thoughts on this. I said, ridiculous. That would only be possible if we drastically reduce the size of the U.S. government. Let's do it. And so there's an important thing in here, because I saw a bunch of libertarian channels saying like, oh, this is super inflationary. This is a terrible idea. That was basically, and if you were to increase tariffs to the point that we were to try and collect
$6 trillion,
$6 trillion, terrible idea, awful, terrible, no good, very bad idea. Okay. Now it's still taxes on the amount of people, and our true taxes, what the government spends, they're going to get it one way or another. And this would be one of them. What would happen at that point is that we would essentially close ourselves off from trade with the rest of the world. If you're going to say what Paul Krugman said, 133%, I guess 133% over the cost of the good or whatever, put that tax on top of it. Sure.
Which is what, by the way, like Sweden does with cars.
Yeah. I mean, the point is it just wouldn't be possible, because the trade would cease. We wouldn't buy the things. We would have such a protectionist policy that we would essentially have all of our manufacturing, everything here. And while some people might say, oh, that's a great idea. It's not great, because you want the most efficient use of your money. If other countries can do it better and faster and more efficiently than you, then you should have your people working on what labor you can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't use slaves,
No.
Not at all. So my point is, this is only possible if we drastically reduce the size of the U.S. government back to where it was when we were only using tariffs and excise taxes. And that is roughly where it would work. They ran into a problem here. They couldn't get more money from tariffs and excise taxes, because I think the Laffer curve on tariffs and excise taxes is way more obvious. You can see, you start taxing those imports more and more and more, eventually you're just not going to have any imports. And then you got no source of funds. And so we got the income tax instead in 1913. And the only way that this would be possible is if you went back, you see the tariffs and excise taxes used to constitute we used to get about 2.5% tax revenue of GDP. And that's what the government ran on. About 2.5%.
That was it.
Of our total GDP. Right now, we're at about 16 to 18% of our GDP. And by the way, we're spending about 25% of our GDP-ish, somewhere around there. And so that's not good. But the only way this would work is if you reduced it back down to roughly the size GDP government that we had when we were only getting tariffs and excise taxes. The other good part about this is that this was actually authorized by the Constitution. This is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. And they actually put imposts, which is a tariff, tax on imports. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. Why did they put general welfare in there? I guess they never really knew how we would just manipulate those words into meaning everything, every possible thing.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it says duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. I think the way that they say this, it looks like it says to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. I think it says that Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes.
And then they qualify what they mean.
Yeah, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense, which is why eventually we had the 16th Amendment, and we ended up getting the income tax, and you guys all know history after that. I'm not saying that we should get $6 trillion worth of tariffs from people every year. It's just not really possible because we would just end up closing ourselves off from the rest of the world, and we probably would innovate a lot slower. We'd grow a lot slower. We'd have a lot less technologies. It just wouldn't be good for everyone. The only way that you could do this is if you went back down to where the government was collecting 3% of GDP and living and working off of that. And then this is a way better idea. This is the idea that the country started with in the first place. No, I do not want a 200% tariff on everything. That would be insanely inflationary.
And basically you're looking at around $750 billion would be 3% of GDP.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see how ridiculous that number sounds right now? It's like we're thinking right now, that's not even could we possibly have a government? We wouldn't even have a government anymore, would we?
I mean, we spend $1 trillion on the common defense.
Yeah, but here's the fact of the matter. We spend, I think the NDAA bill, which by the way we should mention was $890 billion. You see, they keep seeing those headlines that say our interest is more than our military budget. And the military budget, people are like, well, we're going to fix that. We're going to raise up the military budget.
Yeah.
We got to compete with this interest, make sure that we're the number one budget outlay. $890 billion. I think that there's no reason we shouldn't be able to survive on, 25% of that number. And what everyone has to realize is that almost every single other thing that the government does is something that the federal government is not supposed to be doing. And so when you hear something like, well, we could collect maybe $800 billion from tariffs and excise taxes. Yes, right, exactly. That is what we should be doing. And we should live inside of that budget right there, just like we used to.
So then just let the rest of the world overrun us. Let China invade, with their advanced aircraft, balloons.
We should try to out-commie them to beat the commies, That's what we should do.
We should just allow all the balloons over the border from China.
I'm anti-balloon in general, but I think we can find a way to get rid of those things. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about some more news that happened over the weekend. Maybe you heard about it. Maybe you didn't hear about it. We're going to talk about it anyway. Then we got Dumb Bleep of the Week, of course, a jam-packed episode of Dumb Bleep of the Week, and then a special interview with Mr. Ivan Raiklin coming right up.
The ultimate bargain is free. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Before you can fully type the Buy Nothing Project, Google will finish it for you. It's that popular now. Their mission statement is buy less, share more. It makes us all richer and our planet cleaner. You can give away or ask for whatever you want free. Appliances, workout gear, concert and event and travel tickets, and intangibles. Offer the world your photo or poem or short story. Offer people near you that stack of bricks or fish tank you want to get rid of. Check it out at buynothingproject.org and the Buy Nothing app for Apple and Android devices. And poke around Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at and you can quote me.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has outlined what is called a common-sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan would allow around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the US. The administration says it will help keep families together rather than forcing them to leave America while their paperwork is processed. Biden detailed the plans at the White House.
It was about keeping families together. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, family's about the beginning, middle, and the end. About keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years. These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more. But living in the United States all this time with fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today.
The United States and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine as the US prepares to host the North Atlantic Alliance's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. next month. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a press conference with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, and in it he hailed the increase in defence spending by many of the Pact's countries. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
These meetings are all about laying the groundwork for July's summit here, the aim of which NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says is to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for the long haul at the cost to the alliance of at least $45 billion per year. Ukraine wants to join NATO. That's unlikely for now, whilst the war with Russia is ongoing. Still, Mr. Stoltenberg argues, the more credible NATO support for Ukraine, the quicker Russia, quote, would realise it cannot wait us out and the sooner this war can end. It may seem like a paradox, but, he claims, the path to peace is therefore more weapons.
Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. He's since been bailed and will appear in court next month. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank, as FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
During his address on Tuesday, the UN's Human Rights Chief said, so far in the West Bank, 528 Palestinians had been killed by Israeli security forces and or settlers since October. He added that in many cases, these raise serious concerns of unlawful killings. Volker Turk says at the same time 23 Israelis have been killed in the West Bank and Israel in clashes with Palestinians. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Speaking of win for us.
Should this be White Pill Wednesday?
This should be a White Pill Wednesday, but I found it interesting enough to mention because of the fact that the Trump administration is the one that banned bump stocks. And so we're in this really confusing realm right now where now Trump didn't have any gun control legislation go through or, regulations go through.
Well,
like, Trump was hard on guns. What do you mean? Point back, what policy do we live under right now that the Trump administration put in place? What are you talking about? You see, this is a 4D chess move. He banned the bump stocks, and then he put in place 3 Supreme Court justices that told him that they would reverse it when it came up to them. And then they worked it up to the courts. You see, he had this whole thing planned out the whole time.
And he thought of this when he was like 21.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is the long game.
A divided Supreme Court on Friday struck down a federal ban on bump stock devices.
6-3, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
that divided.
Split on, the political party lines that we have in the Supreme Court. The 6-3 ruling along ideological lines continues the conservative majority's record of limiting gun restrictions. They wound the clock back to 2017, most notably in a landmark 2022 ruling that has made it easier to challenge modern gun control laws. That's the Bruen decision. Friday's ruling did not implicate the Second Amendment right to bear arms, but rather the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the ATF, or the BATFE interpretation of law restricting machine guns. I actually think this part was pretty cool because they didn't use the Second Amendment at all, what they essentially decided was that the ATF didn't have the authority to do this, to decide that the bump stock made it into a machine gun. It doesn't mean that Congress couldn't decide to ban it or something. I mean, we have banned full autos still, a lot of restrictions on those. If they wanted to, now that could still get challenged in the Supreme Court. But essentially, this was a ruling against the ATF, saying that they didn't have the authority to do this thing. To decide that this was now a full auto. They said that the bump stocks do not qualify as machine guns under the 1986 law that barred civilians from owning new versions of the weapons. The Trump administration interpreted the law to ban bump stocks in 2018 after the Las Vegas massacre, ultimately killing 60 people in the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. Like 400 or 500 people injured in that thing, 60 people killed, and we never talk about it.
Yeah.
That's
where I'm staying next week, by the way. Mandalay Bay.
Are you? Mm-hmm. You should ask for the same room. Clarence Thomas dove into the technical aspects of the law and the mechanics of how the devices operate, including diagrams, to explain the decision. The 1986 law defines machine guns as a weapon that fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. Well, by that definition in the law, right there, not a machine gun.
It's not.
It's just not. That is a clear, factual interpretation, plain reading of the law right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how this thing ever went in place in the first place. That's just not the case.
Well, you're telling me that an agency of bureaucrats can just all of a sudden define something as something else.
Yeah.
That's how it happened.
Alito said that Congress needed to amend the law if it wants to outlaw them. Justice Sotomayor said she said, by maintaining a myopic view focused on these mechanisms, the majority puts machine guns back in the hands of the people. I mean, literally, the law stipulates what makes something a machine gun or full auto. Democrats are unhappy about it. Chuck Schumer called this an assault on public safety. Let me see. Douglas said more people are going to die because of this Supreme Court ruling. I haven't seen any data specifically on how many people were getting killed by bump stocks every year prior to the Las Vegas shooting thing. And then there's some interesting stuff about the Vegas shooting, not those conspiracy theory things. But when they bring in how fast you can shoot, bump stocks can fire an estimated 400 to 800 rounds per minute, a rate approaching that of automatic weapons. So that's interesting.
That's a broad range.
Yeah, that's a very wide range. And I think that has to do with some of the inconsistency. Like a lot of people using bump stocks, you got to hold your finger perfectly for it to trigger every single time. If you move your finger, you got to do it again.
And yet you need a level.
Yeah, you got to have, goes without saying. You got to have a level. The other thing is that's still impossible because that would mean you would have to have an 800 round magazine attached to your gun, because that's literally the number if you just shot consistently for a minute. It doesn't account for reloading. So we still use fake numbers when it comes to this. That doesn't account for any reloading time whatsoever.
You need a belt fed.
And yeah, exactly. And they say the Las Vegas dude, don't even know his name, even though it's one of the biggest mass killing civilians in American history. Like people in the government are the biggest mass killers.
Yeah.
But he fired what they said was 1,000 rounds in 11 minutes because he was using bump stocks. So
that's higher than the estimate.
No, 1,000 rounds in 11 minutes.
Oh,
110 rounds per minute is what that would come out to, I think. Something like that. Maybe a little less. I don't know what that comes out to. Someone tell me. 90? What do you do? Someone do the math. Crunch the numbers.
Yeah, 100. It would be 110 rounds per minute.
Well, that would put you up to, there's something off about our figures right now.
You said 1,100 in 11 minutes?
No, 1,000 in 11 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we need to get that 90 something. I don't know what that comes out to.
99.
So that's not 400 to 800 rounds per minute. First off, that would put them up to 4,000 to 8,000 if it were 10 minutes. In this case, it was 11 minutes. Fact of the matter is that 400 to 800 number is total BS. Doesn't account for reloading. In this guy's case, he had to switch guns. Doesn't account for not doing it perfectly because you got to hold your finger perfectly when you're doing it. The Las Vegas dude's number might be about the max because he had a bunch of guns, apparently, allegedly, ready to go, so he just switched guns and was able to do 1,000 rounds in 11 minutes. And that's more likely the number that would happen in the wild. We're not talking about a laboratory setting.
What I find interesting is that Americans bought about 520,000 bump stocks between 2008 and 2017 while they were legal. And only one of these incidents happened. So 1 divided by 520,000.
So I got this video, which I think is interesting. If you guys want to see the difference, this guy does a good job. The reason I like this video is because he does perfectly with the bump stock. I watched a lot of other people that fired it and they weren't very good at it. So there would be these pauses in their firing. I think this guy had like 1 pause in his firing, and it compares it from a regular semi-auto to one with a bump stock and then a full auto, and the time differences between those things. Are you interested in watching this test right here?
Let's see it.
Weapons to law enforcement.
I'm going to take you through what's regular semi-auto is like. Then we're going to go to semi-auto with the bump stock, and then I'll show you full auto.
First up, the standard semi-automatic AR-15 with no add-ons.
First of all, he's not really holding it properly. But
it takes Guetta about 6 seconds to discharge 30 rounds. That's a firing rate of about 5 rounds per second. Next, the AR-15 with a bump stock. In 4 seconds, Guetta clears his magazine. That's a firing rate of about 7 rounds per second. The bump stock replaces the gun's standard shoulder stock. It essentially uses the gun's recoil to bounce the weapon against the shooter's trigger finger. Yes, it increases the firing rate, though it doesn't carry the same consistency. Finally, the automatic AR-15. In less than 2 seconds, Guetta empties an entire 30-round magazine with 1 pull of the trigger. That's a firing rate of at least 15 rounds per second.
So a full auto, the cool thing about that test right there, the full auto ended up being twice as fast as the bump stock. And the bump stock was only...
No, more than twice as fast.
Well, the bump stock was 7.5 rounds per second, and the full auto was 15 rounds per second.
Okay.
And the regular semi-auto was 6 rounds per second. So the bump stock was like barely better than the regular semi-auto. And then the full auto was twice as fast. The point is, they're very different. It doesn't just convert it directly into a full auto gun.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's important for people to realize one thing.
Now listen to the sound of this. What does this sound like to you? Does this sound like a bump stock?
I've got inside sources that say it sounds like a 240.
Guetta says videos emerging from Las Vegas lead him to believe some portion of the attack was carried out with modified semi-automatic weapons.
Full autos are very well-tuned machines, and they have a very consistent shot pattern sound.
A well-tuned machine that's difficult for civilian.
That was it right there. If they ban the bump stocks, I'm sure some people came up with this already, but if they haven't, they should have. Has anyone tried a bump shoulder? Now, hear me out here. You don't attach the thing to the gun. This probably already exists. These gun guys are all over it, Why not have something spring-loaded that you put on your shoulder that the stock sits on?
Yeah.
That kicks it back as you're shooting. It's not attached to the gun,
Yeah.
So, why not? You could probably hold your shoulder perfectly.
That would definitely be a modified arm.
Yeah. But you got the right to bear arms,
yeah. But you have the right to modified bear, to bear modified arms.
I feel like you could put enough pressure forward that when the gun shoots, you yourself push it back towards your trigger finger to get it going. But I don't know. I haven't tried this before.
What about modified bear arms? Would the woman still choose the bear? That's the question.
That is the bigger question.
Yeah.
For sure. Find out more tomorrow on Good Morning Liberty. Let's see. What else we got here? By the way, in that NDAA, I said we needed
that's
to
a good
mention
one.
it.
RoboFinger.
You
Just
could do
create
that.
a finger device that just on the trigger. Women would love those too.
You put this thing over. Now, first I was going to say, in the early times, they would cut off the finger and replace it with a RoboFinger, but what you need is an apparatus that you wear over your trigger finger. You just keep your finger, you rest it right there, and then this little guy just like that,
That's why I said women would love it too.
I know. So anyhow, this NDAA thing, by the way, inside the bill has an automatic registry for selective service. Like you don't used to when we were kids. You'd have to fill out the thing, and register yourself for slavery if the U.S. government wanted to enslave you to fight.
Sorry, Costco.
To fight in favor of
I think you're included
oil.
in this age range.
In our day, we were fighting for oil. Now they're fighting for probably things for electric vehicle batteries and stuff like that is what they've moved on to now. Different rare earth minerals and things like that is what we've shifted to.
Oil and opiates.
Yeah, that too. Well, that's what we were dying for. There are people we're dying for. But now these days it's for the EV batteries because you got to get whatever nickel and cobalt and all that kind of stuff. So they put in an automatic registry now, which is automatic conscription for people. Well, automatic registry for conscription. And this whole draft thing, I don't know how we still allow this registering for a draft for only men, first off. Crazy sexist, okay? But I will accept a compromise where trans man has to sign up for it. Got a trans man? He's got to sign up too.
Yeah.
I said he. Why didn't he have to sign up for the draft? That's my biggest question, okay? I'm not asking trans women to sign up, okay? Biological men. You don't have to. Of course, you should be excluded from slavery. But trans men, you want to get in with the boys? Let's go fight for some nickel. Let's do that thing. Yeah, it's automatic now. It's pretty cool. Let's see. It's 10:50. Things are going kind of crazy in Argentina right now. They're having some real big protests and stuff, like big commie protests over what Milei is trying to do. And this is not... It has not gone as bad as I thought it was going to go, because when I saw some of the videos from these protests, of course, I was like, I told you, it's going to get bad. The people who are going to get hurt by these policies, people who live off of other people's money.
This doesn't look as bad as Jan 6, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that at all. But as far as Argentina goes, it's pretty bad.
Oh, okay.
They haven't had to deal with the kind of uprisings that we dealt with here in America. But they're having their own little uprisings right now.
Senators have to go into hiding like AOC did?
No.
See, I told you.
No, it's not that bad. So here's some videos from Reuters, I think. Thousands of protesters clashed with police as lawmakers debated President Milei's major economic reforms.
The guy's wearing the wrong mask.
I love
he doesn't understand.
The people have co-opted this Guy Fawkes mask to be people that are in favor of the government being more powerful and stealing more money from people.
Yeah.
How crazy is it, by the way, that our election this year, the most important election of our lifetimes, is on November 5th. That's remember the 5th of November.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. That's the only reason I remember what day it is. Riot police used tear gas, rubber bullets, and water cannons. It proposes changes like cutting pensions, along with privatizing public companies and weakening labor rights. Their inflation rate is at nearly 300%, and half its people live in poverty. So you should spend more money, So the Senate, they had a tie vote, and then the vice president came in and broke the tie vote. By the way, this person's ridiculous post does have a community note, so that's nice. They say, Javier Milei's Argentina is in complete chaos. People are protesting his devastating policies, which are driving people into unimaginable poverty and desperation. They're doing just fine last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inflation is at 300%.
population living in poverty reported to be as high as 50%.
Which last year it was 45%.
Yeah, I know.
So it's much better.
In response, he's declared the people terrorists and accused protesters of trying to perpetrate a coup. What I love is how ridiculous is it for Javier Milei to say that the people are trying to perpetrate a coup with these protests that we're seeing videos of right now. As we stated before, this is no January 6th.
Yeah.
Which was an actual coup,
right?
On the government.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing right now, one thing I love.
I mean, that's just a car on fire. That's not defecation on someone's desk.
No. No one. I didn't see a single person walking out with a podium. All podiums remain intact.
Yeah. As far as we know.
So these people
and that's
need to
from
calm
our
down,
interpreters because we don't speak Spanish, but our interpreters are saying that's what's going on. That's news from the ground.
So what you have right now are people who are upset that they might be losing some of their free money that they've been getting. Now, I say it's stolen from other people. It is, in effect. It's mostly printed and given to them, which is then stolen from everyone, socialized theft among everyone. Other measures deal with reducing access to minimum retirement allowances and weakening labor protections, slammed by left-wing opponents as a license to fire workers. Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
You could fire workers who aren't being productive on the job that you don't need? You would rather fire them than have them there?
This
is tyranny.
Yeah.
This is tyranny.
That is fascism.
God. This is total fascism. So anyhow, I hope that this stuff doesn't get worse. This bill that was passed in the Senate still has to go to their House because of some changes that were made in the Senate. This is like the most major bill. This is like the bill that is going to give him the power to do some of the things that he was wanting to do. And so that's why they're having these crazy protests. When Milei was first coming about in our news cycle, I said that this was going to go terribly. And I was very negative about how this is going to go. I did want to say it's gone way better than what I thought it was going to, because he hasn't been assassinated yet. They've been able to reduce the inflation rate, month over month inflation rate, I think was down to 4.5% last month, which is still really high.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine we get our inflation rate and it's like 0.3%, and we're like, oh, we got to throw that guy out of office, And so 4.5% is really bad, but it's down from 20-something% month over month when he took office. So they've done a pretty good job getting the inflation rate down, And the country hasn't...
It's still going up.
Still going up. The year over year is still higher.
Prices are still going up.
That's how inflation works, even for Javier Milei.
Yeah.
That's how it works. So,
but the policies he's advocating for are the ones that are actually going to get it going in the other direction.
Mm-hmm. There's going to be
these things don't happen overnight.
There's going to be a lot of pain for people along the way, because a lot of people, I listened back to our episodes.
It takes a long time to eradicate cancer.
It's hard to get a heroin addict to where they're not addicted to heroin anymore. It's difficult. And right now, you got a lot of heroin addicts out there on the street protesting that he's going to give slightly less heroin to the people.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
So, or at least you got to buy your own heroin. That's basically what he's telling them. He's not going to give it to you anymore. And so people are upset. I hope nothing really, really bad happens. But these protests were pretty easy to see coming, because there's a large group of people who live off of the state, and life is going to get worse for them before it gets better. That's why it's super important for the libertarians there in Argentina to have some moral courage, to stick to their principles, and hopefully keep Milei in office for some time. I don't know what term limits are there, but it's going to take time for this to actually work. And by the way, speaking of Javier Milei, Charlie and I are going to be at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 10th through the 13th. Yeah, 10th through the 13th. And Javier Milei is headlining the event along with Ice-T and some other great folks. We're going to be setting up there, interviewing people, hanging out with people, seeing what's going on, going around meeting people while we're there. And you guys should seriously consider going. especially if you're, in that area. You should definitely, you got no excuse if you're already in that area, say within 8 to 10 hours of driving distance, you should definitely be there. But we got to fly there. And so you should fly there too. And by the way, it can be pricey, but remember, you're going the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and seeing all kinds of speakers. You can go to freedomfest.com. And if you want to get your ticket, you can use a promo code GML50, GML50, to get $50 off the price of admission if you want to come and hang out. I think there should be a lot of people there. Give Javier Milei a warm welcome here in America. By the way, GML50 is that code. GML stands for Good Morning Liberty, which is Charlie and I's daily podcast. We do an episode every single day of the week when we want to. I don't know why we say when we want to. Oh, it's because sometimes we don't do it every single day of the week. That's the reason. Also, it's not grammatically correct, and for some reason it sticks in people's minds. So it's kind of a joke that we've had going for a long time. But we have 1,275 episodes on whatever podcast app it is that you use. See, I was over here thinking that most of our listeners used Apple for their podcast, and I ran a poll on X, and most of them were actually Spotify. The number 2 winner was Other. I don't even know what other podcast apps there are, honestly. And then the number 3 was Apple. So I guess I need to start sharing the Spotify link. But anyway, 1,275 episodes of Liberty, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes for an episode, depending on what kind of role we're on that day. Talking life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning. Why the pursuit of meaning instead of the pursuit of happiness? Well, because if you pursue happiness, you might as well just go get addicted to drugs or something like that. You'll feel pretty happy. You want to pursue meaning in your life because you're not always going to be happy. And so if you have a meaningful life, you can still move forward and deal with all the bad things that are inevitably going to happen. All right. So you want to go do that. You want to go find Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. You want to go to joingml.com so you can also join the Fed Haters Club and hang out with us every single day live as we are doing these episodes. So you can chat with us and you get discounts on all the merch on the merch store from GodHatesFeds.com. All right, that's GodHatesFeds.com. Are you keeping note of all of these websites I'm giving you? Because you should be. By the way, coming up, it's everyone's favorite segment, going a little bit earlier this week for Dumb Bleep of the Week when we come back.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has outlined what he's called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan would allow around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the US. The administration says it will help keep families together rather than forcing them to leave America while their paperwork is processed. Biden detailed the plans at the White House.
It was about keeping families together. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, family's about the beginning, middle, and the end. About keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years. These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more, but living in the United States all this time with fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today.
The United States and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine as the US prepares to host the North Atlantic Alliance's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. next month. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a press conference with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, and in it he hailed the increase in defence spending by many of the Pact's countries. Eversense Benji Hire reports.
These meetings are all about laying the groundwork for July's summit here, the aim of which NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says is to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for the long haul at the cost to the alliance of at least $45 billion per year. Ukraine wants to join NATO. That's unlikely for now, whilst the war with Russia is ongoing. Still, Mr. Stoltenberg argues, the more credible NATO support for Ukraine, the quicker Russia, quote, would realise it cannot wait us out and the sooner this war can end. It may seem like a paradox, but, he claims, the path to peace is therefore more weapons.
Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. He's since been bailed and will appear in court next month. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank, as FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
During his address on Tuesday, the UN's Human Rights Chief said so far in the West Bank, 528 Palestinians had been killed by Israeli security forces and or settlers since October. He added that in many cases these raise serious concerns of unlawful killings. Volker Turk says at the same time 23 Israelis have been killed in the West Bank and Israel in clashes with Palestinians. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. If you are confused by the pace of political developments in France, you are not the only one. Campaigning in the country's election got underway on Monday, days after the surprise decision to call it by President Emmanuel Macron, in reaction to a surge by the far right in races earlier this month for the European Parliament. What is going on? Correspondent Peter Allen is in Paris.
We have a series of alleged alliances, extreme right, extreme left, lots of candidates, of course, in the middle as well. And the idea at the moment, to sum up, is that the left is trying to create a bloc, which means that only one leftist candidate will stand in each constituency to oppose the far right in each of those constituencies. Meanwhile, the far right is trying to form an alliance with the centre right, which would be Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella's party on the far right, the National Rally, trying to pal up with the Gaullist Conservatives, who are now called the Republicans. That's not going very well at all. A lot of Gaullist Conservatives, including former President Nicolas Sarkozy, is saying that he doesn't want anything to do with the far right at all. So it really is absolutely chaotic over here.
And the first round of the election takes place on June the 30th, with the second round a week later. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has outlined what he's called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. The US and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine. Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested for driving while intoxicated, and the UN Human Rights Chief is warning of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank. There's more from us on X at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
In this week's Onion Tips section, 5 easy ways to adapt your deplorable and parasitic existence for the upcoming Armageddon. Tip 1. Focus on preparing your home for any number of disaster situations, which still probably won't take your mind off of your impending death or the myriad mistakes you made in your short, pitiful life. Tip 2. Make sure your linens are clean prior to the upcoming catastrophe, as these are likely the very same sheets on which you will soon be slowly asphyxiated. Tip 3. Take some time off work and spend your last days free from the bonds of the oppressive machine that was just about the only thing giving you a purpose to your otherwise insignificant days. Tip 4. Spend your final waking minutes before the end of the world with your family, knowing full well you'd rather be doing a number of other gratifying yet completely depraved things. Right, sicko? In other news, a smitten foot fetishist thinks these may be the two. A woman and her gay best friend go on another one of their little adventures, and a dead daughter would have wanted a $220 million liability settlement.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Well, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Give me 10 seconds to tell you about the fact that you should find our daily podcast, Good Morning Liberty, on your favorite podcast app, whatever app that may be. We've got 1,275 episodes up on your favorite podcast app. So take the 1,275 episode challenge today. It's Dumb Bleep of the Week. We're going to have fun regardless. That's the day of the week where the live group throws in tons of submissions. The live what? Throws in tons of submissions. And I throw in a bunch too. Actually, most of them come from the live group this week. And then we put them all together. I kind of whittle the list down to 10 normally. And they're going to vote on which one is the dumbest. The winner will go on to the Dumb Bleep of the Year Tournament Bracket Challenge. And then we'll figure out who said the dumbest thing this year. We've got some contenders for moving on to that Dumb Bleep of the Year today. So if it's your first time listening, just keep in mind, normally there are 2 of us right now. There is only one of us, but you should still subscribe and follow and leave comments and reviews and all those things, and come back next week when we go back to there being 2 people here, not just one. Well, let's get in to the Dumb Bleep of the Week. Let me put that up on the screen. The very first thing, which we'll breeze by right fast, because this isn't the most important thing of number 1, but we did sign finally this bilateral Ukraine-U.S. security agreement. That's right. We've signed off on 10 years of support for the country of Ukraine. That's good, and eventually getting them into NATO as well. On June 13th, Biden and Zelensky signed a historic U.S.-Ukraine bilateral security agreement reflecting the close partnership between our 2 democracies. Today, the U.S. is sending a powerful signal of our strong support for Ukraine now and into the future. In here, we've got build and maintain Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capability. Just as our founding fathers envisioned, of course, that's one of our jobs. We are going to build and maintain their credible defense and deterrence capability. That's great. We're going to strengthen Ukraine's capacity to sustain its fight over the long term. What they mean is us still just giving them money, for sure. Accelerate Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic integration, including through Ukraine's implementation of reforms to its democratic, economic, and security institutions in line with its EU accession goals and NATO's program of reforms. Achieve a just peace that respects Ukraine's rights under international law in this war, okay? And consult in the event of a future Russian armed attack
against Ukraine. So I hope everyone signed up willingly for that 10-year plan to keep giving your money to Ukraine, because that's what we're going to do, and I'm sure it's never going to lead to any U.S. troops on the ground. By the way, Putin did make a ceasefire offer. I believe this was yesterday as well. Of course, it entails them giving up some of those occupied regions. The Ukraine would have to move out of those occupied regions, and they're not going to do it. They can't do it because it's better for them to lose a few 100,000 more people and then do it. That's going to be the plan. But the number one thing I wanted to do for number one is Lindsey Graham. That's the most important part of Dumb Bleep number one. Mr. Lindsey Graham, let's hear a video. He accidentally, actually not accidentally, this is clearly planned, but he told us the real reason behind why we have to be supporting Ukraine. I know a lot of people tell you that it's for democracy, and they tell you that it's because then Putin is just going to roll through the rest of Europe because Putin is Hitler when Trump's not being Hitler. But the actual reason is something that we're all a little bit more familiar with, and it has to do with resources and money. And Lindsey Graham just went ahead and said the loud part out loud because a lot of us already knew that this was the case. I think he might be the first one to come out and say it. Let's hear it.
What did Trump do to get the weapons flowing? He created a loan system. They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal how Ukraine ends. Mm-hmm. Let's help them win a war we can't afford to lose. Let's find a solution to this war. But they're sitting on a gold mine to give Putin $10 or $12 trillion of critical minerals that he will share with China is ridiculous.
Okay, so that's fine. You know what? I commend him for coming out and being honest about this, and I wish everyone else would be honest about this as well. This is what it's about, and this is what it's always been about. This is what it is always about. When they're sitting on this gold mine, well, we don't want other people to have that gold mine, which you could make a national security argument for why you don't want other people to have that gold mine. Sure. But also it's very important for us that we have direct access to that gold mine because that could be good for us. And so therefore, let's waste a few 100,000 lives. I don't support Russia invading Ukraine. Not a fan of that whatsoever, but also it's not something I feel I need to pay for, okay? This is their responsibility. It always was, and they failed to do so. But hey, at least we can get access to some of these minerals, right? Number two, the LGBTQIA2SL+ pride murals. You guys have seen the videos circulating online of these evil, bigoted, felonious criminals that have been burning tires on these pride murals. Now, where are the pride murals? They're on the road. Okay, you can drive over the pride murals, but you cannot do any such tire burning on these pride murals. Now, people are doing it on purpose. I'm not saying this is an accidental tire burning. I'm sure if you were to slam on your brakes and skid across the road and there happened to be some scuff marks on the mural, you're not going to get charged with felony vandalism or anything like that. So this is people intentionally doing it. Well, you know, this story is about some kids doing it. I've seen some other ones recently, a guy in his truck burning the tires on the pride murals. We'll get into that. But teens charged with felony vandalism for leaving, get this, black scuff marks on the road. I'm sorry, on an LGBTQ crosswalk. And a scooter company is declaring this a no-go zone. You're going to lose power on your scooter because they were using scooters to do this. No LGBTs were hurt in the process of this, but maybe their feelings. I guess their feelings are hurt. One adult and two minors were charged with felonies after they rode scooters over an LGBTQ plus crosswalk in Spokane, Washington. And the scooter rental company declared a no-go zone to protect the mural. Spokane police said they were called by reports of vandalism on the mural. And they said they were able to witness some of the damage being done firsthand. They arrested 3 people, 2 of whom were minors, and charged with Class B felony of malicious mischief in the first degree. Intentional mischief. something that we just can't have in the United States. A criminal complaint said the teens responded with epithets when they were confronted by other residents during the incident. Investigators said there was widespread damage to the Pride mural, but they've got insurance, I'm sure, including black scuff marks consistent with scooter wheels. They have conducted a full investigation. We are still waiting to hear final results back from the lab, but these specific scuff marks have been found to be consistent with what are only known as scooter wheels. So I just want to let everyone know that we have done this investigation, and that's what we found out so far. Photographs with the police report showed about 14 black skid marks. My God. Lime, the company that rents scooters to pedestrians, said it was instituting a no-go zone over the mural so that its devices would stop working if someone tried to ride them in the LGBTQ plus crosswalk. A scooter that enters a no-go zone will slowly come to a stop until the rider walks it out of the zone. Lime Director of Government Relations Hayden Harvey released a statement to the national desk saying that the company strongly condemns the act of vile hatred committed via scooter wheel. Sorry, I forgot to tell you to get your kids out of the room while we were talking about this. Speaking of kids, this is something I think the kids do. I don't know if you guys were like this when you were in your teens, but if there was something that you weren't supposed to do, sometimes you would do it because it was something that you weren't supposed to do. Even if you didn't have any kind of specific ideology wrapped around doing said thing, or some type of artistic photo that you drew or something in the bathroom or whatever it was, you didn't really have to care about it. What you cared about was that it was something that you didn't have to do or didn't need to do, weren't supposed to do. And so I'm guilty of doing a few things like that, and these kids are as well. Now, maybe they just hate gay people. That could be the possibility. The ridiculous part about this whole thing, because now you see videos all over the internet of people vandalizing the road. Okay? I don't think it's a good idea to put a protected mural on a road that people drive over all the time. Maybe you guys can let me know if I'm wrong about this. But the idea of this protected mural that you could vandalize also being something that people drive over all the time is sort of asking for trouble and sort of looking for criminals. I don't know. You tell me. The Babylon Bee did a good job making fun of this. This headline right here says, "Man arrested for urinating on new Pride urinals." Yes, that's kind of what we have right now. I mean, you don't have to burn out your tires on the murals. I get people are doing it on purpose and they're trying to cause a stir and cause some trouble. But maybe we put it like on the side of the building that's next to the road. I just sort of think that putting it down on the road is a stupid idea, guys. I don't know about you. We're going to breeze through these because we have a couple long ones to go through here later. Number 3. This one's called DeSantis Migration. Here's a post that says, if you're wondering why people are moving out of Florida, it's because Ron DeSantis is spending his time fighting Mickey Mouse and Bud Light rather than actually governing. And this is a video. If you're just listening, you're not watching right now. This is a video of cars driving through a flood. Looks like it's going, they got some bad storms and stuff like that. And right now, yes, due to Ron DeSantis's attacks on Disney and Bud Light, he's not been able to alleviate water pooling on these roads. Now, maybe some of these roads have Pride murals on them and he's trying to drown them out. I'm not really sure, but here's cars driving through floods. I did see the problem here. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but there was, in fact, a car right there that's got a rainbow tinted rear windshield, and this appears to be the target of Ron DeSantis's entire plan to allow this area of the city to flood. That's the only thing that I can come up with. So The first, obviously, stupid thing out of this is what the heck does the governor of the state have to do with the fact that there's floods going on right there? I don't know if he was supposed to have prevented climate change or he has stopped some of the climate change measures, and this is the climate gods retaliating immediately after Ron DeSantis. The second really dumb thing about this is that Florida's population just keeps going up. In fact, at a faster rate than all the other states, especially when it's due to actual net migration. Now, there's people moving out of Florida. There's always people moving out of states. Maybe there's people who moved out of Florida because they don't like Ron DeSantis. Maybe they actually thought they couldn't say gay. And so they went to a gay sanctuary somewhere where they could still say gay. I'm not sure. And so, sure, there's people moving out, but the idea of if you wonder why people are moving out of Florida, it's because of this. Well, that can easily be taken apart with some simple Googling, or in this case, it came from the community notes that's on the post. Like, for instance, from 2008 to 2023, the population grew by an equivalent of 1.34% per year from 2008 to 2023. I think that made it the number 4 fastest growing state. I think actually it was Idaho and then Utah and then Texas and then Florida from what I saw on this. Now that's the overall population. That also includes like natural changes in the population. For instance, people dying, and Florida has a lot of old people. And so you got like a population replacement rate issue that could be there. What about actual net migration? That's people moving in versus people moving out of the state, which is what that post is referencing. From 2008 to 2023, the change due to net migration was 1.29% per year. It's people moving out versus people moving in. There are more people moving in than are moving out. And just in 2023 alone, the change due to net migration was 1.68%, plus 1.68%. More people moving in than out, okay? So, interesting on here, states where more people are moving out than are moving in. You got Oregon on here. I believe we got a Kansas. I believe we got a Pennsylvania. Those are sitting around 0-ish. And then states where people are leaving, I can pick out 3 pretty easily right here. New York State, Illinois, and California are actually losing people due to net migration. That's weird. I had no idea why New York, Illinois, and California would be losing people due to that. That's some kind of weird thing. They must all have something in common, although I can't figure out what it is. You guys can let me know at Good AM Liberty on X. Number 4, veterans dish Trump. Veterans are dissing Trump as a draft dodger in a new pro-Biden D-Day ad. So this was from D-Day. It's a little bit old. We're past D-Day by about a week right now, okay? But this is pretty ridiculous when you consider the fact that his opponent also dodged as many drafts as he did. Actually, yeah, about the same draft dodging that Trump did. And so maybe don't throw, stones in your glass house kind of thing. A group of 3 veterans slammed former President Donald Trump as a draft dodger in a new ad Thursday, which was released on the 80th anniversary D-Day. The ad was dropped while Joe Biden was visiting Normandy. Neither Trump nor Biden are veterans, but Trump has faced heavy backlash over allegedly calling veterans that were buried in France losers and suckers. Allegedly, he said that. He denied that he ever said that, but it's important that we mention it in every single article where we talk about veterans and Trump. Trump has also faced scrutiny after he claimed he received a high draft number during the Vietnam War, but he was exempted for attending college and for medical reasons, according to Business Insider, after being diagnosed with bone spurs in 1968. I'm surprised he didn't say, well, sir, your bone spurs don't matter because you're going to die. But that's not what they said. You were able to dodge that draft. Wow. That is just awful. I wonder if anyone else also was exempted for attending college and for medical reasons. Oh, it was Biden. It was Biden who was also able to dodge the draft because he was going to college and for medical reasons. Okay, that's weird. Biden not only received deferments for his undergraduate days at the University of Delaware, but for 3 years of law school and Syracuse University. When his education deferments expired in 1968, Biden requested a deferment based on the fact that he had asthma as a teenager. He did this in spite of the fact, according to his own book, that he was a star athlete in high school and in college, played intramural sports, and was a lifeguard in the summer. So the asthma wasn't too big of a deal then. What about this whole draft dodging thing? I happen to believe that if there's a draft, you should dodge it. I'm in favor of dodging any draft that you don't want to be a part of, okay? And so I don't hold it against either one of these guys. Well, you might say, well, other people had to go in your stead. That doesn't mean that you should be forced into conscription because other people are doing it. Oh, similar. I realized this when I was thinking about it today. That's actually a really pretty close analogy to like just because one person got out of taxes, it doesn't mean that you should force them to pay taxes because it's unfair. You know, you got to put them into the prison with everyone else. Well, just because all these people are going in the draft doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to dodge it. Okay? The draft is immoral. It should be always, forever immoral and illegal. There is no reason that the government should be able to conscript people and send them to die. Okay? Number 5, let's keep moving on here. Cancer charity is sorry after using the word cervix for the transgender community. Shocking stuff here. A Canadian Cancer Society is apologizing for using the term cervix on a webpage for transgender and non-binary people assigned female at birth. That, just so we're clear, the people have cervi. Okay? It's not that they don't. Cervices. I don't know what the proper... Is that the proper plural? Is it really? Cervices. Okay, I like cervi myself. I think that's a pretty good one. On the page dedicated to cervical cancer screenings for members of the LGBTQ plus community, the charitable organization explains in a disclaimer they, quote, recognize that many trans men and non-binary people may have mixed feelings or feel distance from words like cervix. The charity acknowledged in a section titled Words Matter that some members of the community may prefer to use other terms such as front hole. Quote, we recognize the limitations of the words we've used while also acknowledging the need for simplicity. The Canadian Cancer Society wrote, quote, another reason we use words like cervix is to normalize the reality that men can have these body parts too. So, anyhow, I'm not even gonna say anything else after this. I'm gonna let the news piece speak for itself, because I don't think you need to hear anything from me right now. They're apologizing for using the actual word. I'll just leave it at that. Like, that's what it's called. There's a scientific word for cervix, and you have one also. But it might have hurt your feelings to use that because you're a man. But then they try to back up their usage of the word by saying, well, we're trying to affirm the fact that men also have cervices. That's what's happening right now, folks. It's a mess, and I don't know how we're ever going to get out of it, but we will if good people refuse to say and go along with stupid things. That is the best way to get out of this whole mess. Enough people stand up and say, I will not be an idiot like you're being. We'll be right back with more Dumb Bleep of the Week.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has outlined what is called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan would allow around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the US. The administration says it will help keep families together rather than forcing them to leave America while their paperwork is processed. Biden detailed the plans at the White House.
It was about keeping families together. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, family's about the beginning, middle, and the end. About keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years. These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more, but living in the United States all this time with this fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today.
The United States and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine as the US prepares to host the North Atlantic Alliance's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. next month. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a press conference with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, and in it he hailed the increase in defence spending by many of the Pact's countries. Eversense Benji Hire reports.
These meetings are all about laying the groundwork for July's summit here, the aim of which NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says is to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for the long haul at the cost to the alliance of at least $45 billion per year. Ukraine wants to join NATO. That's unlikely for now, whilst the war with Russia is ongoing. Still, Mr. Stoltenberg argues, the more credible NATO support for Ukraine, the quicker Russia, quote, would realise it cannot wait us out and the sooner this war can end. It may seem like a paradox, but, he claims, the path to peace is therefore more weapons.
Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. He's since been bailed and will appear in court next month. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank, as FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
During his address on Tuesday, the UN's Human Rights Chief said so far in the West Bank, 528 Palestinians had been killed by Israeli security forces and or settlers since October. He added that in many cases these raise serious concerns of unlawful killings. Volker Turk says at the same time 23 Israelis have been killed in the West Bank and Israel in clashes with Palestinians. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Oh, we made it to Dumb Bleep number 6 already. Doing a good job, moving quickly. As I said, we have a couple videos we have to watch that are going to take up some time. And I've done my best to trim them down as much as I can, but I can't do any more trimming to these videos. How about an irreverent feminist manifesto for the 21st century? We've got a performance for you guys to listen to. Women have progressed so far, and it's great that we're all finally equal. We've been fighting for this for such a long time. And these feminists, they're up there showing that they can music also. Okay? They can read music good just like you. In fact, as Amanda pointed out, they are actually, keep this in mind, they are actually reading off of sheet music during this performance on television, as noted by the fact that as they move along through this complicated and wonderful piece, They are turning the pages of their sheet music as to make sure that they don't mess up, because you would not want to mess up. And they can read. That's a positive. Okay, we know they can read, and they want to make sure that they're not going to mess up. And I want to commend them on their achievements. Here we go.
London Soho Theatre tonight. It's arrived here from Belgium. It's called Sirens, and it is described as an irreverent feminist manifesto for the 21st century. So have a listen and have a good night.
Brings chills, you know. It's the kind of piece that brings chills to the body, just all over. It is correct. I mean, they did have to turn the page there. You see, this is when it gets to the really complicated barking section of the piece. And, you know, I don't think that we should expect everyone to memorize pieces like this. When you get into this kind of complex world of music, you know, I used to read a lot of music off of sheet music as well when I was playing. And I never had to do anything as tough as barking. So, you know, I'm not going to judge them at all. I guess this is some form of modern art here. I'm not really sure. I'm not a fan of modern art myself. I know that this does come from a play, and I'm sure they brought the best song from the play. Maybe the play has other songs too, what might be considered typical music. But you want to bring some of your best work when you're performing on TV, and I think they did a great job. Pure perfection. They didn't mess up a single thing. Okay, that's Dumb Bleep number 6. Thanks, Amanda, for throwing that in. Modern art, by the way, is something that drives me nuts. I'm sure a lot of people listening right now or hanging out with me in the group as well probably feel the same way. When you see you see it on X and across social media sometimes, and this idea that anything can be art, I guess that's true. Art is subjective. A lot of times I feel like people push that boundary, and the boundary is not really the art. The boundary is how far to the dumb side of the scale, ridiculous side of the scale can I go and still get people to act like this is art. And I think that is the actual art form that they are performing. It's not the art really. It's testing people's judgment and limitations and making sure that they're down with this philosophy. So that's how I feel about modern art. Number 7, we made it to the Blackhawks section. So we got 4 more here. A couple of them are going to have videos. There's a hockey team with a very controversial name. Okay, some of these teams have given up on their very controversial names, but the Blackhawks have not given up on that name. And these ardent racists are going to do whatever they can to keep this. They're so racist. How racist are they? They're so racist that they named this team the Chicago Blackhawks. And by the way, thanks for Costco for doing all the research on this. I think this was the best way to sum it up. But the Blackhawks name comes from Chief Blackhawk, a Sauk Native American leader who was a prominent figure in Illinois history. The team's founder, Frederick McLaughlin, named the team in 1926 in honor of the U.S. 86th Infantry Division, which was nicknamed the Black Hawk Division during World War I in recognition of Black Hawk's legacy. McLaughlin had served in the division, and the name was one of the many sports team names that used Native Americans as icons. Now, I think that there is a good way to do this and a bad way to do this. There are actual people throughout our history that you could want to honor by naming a team after them. They were so fierce. They were so amazing that you want to name a team after them. You know, you don't just want to name it like an eagle or something. You want to pick an actual person throughout history. And I think naming someone after someone that's a Native American is even a good way to honor some of the Native Americans that you guys know what happened there. Okay, I don't have to tell you all about that. But some people think that we should never, ever talk about these people ever again. And that seems to be where the great-granddaughter and direct lineal descendant of Black Hawk comes down on this. She has denounced the Chicago Blackhawks and demanded they stop using her ancestors' name and image. Now, I think we're going to watch most of this video, but just in case I happen to pull the plug on it early for any reason, it's also important to mention that Blackhawks tribe still exists. And they have, in fact, signed a deal with the Chicago Blackhawks where they are getting paid money for the usage of his name and a cartoon figure of his likeness, of course. So his actual tribe has agreed to this. They were against it at first, and then they said, well, how about we pay you for licensing? And they're like, okay, yeah, that's good. Say whatever you want. Of course, she's going to say that this is them. This is typical, taking advantage of vulnerable people in society. They chose that they wanted to get paid for it. It wasn't exactly that their principles were that strong. When someone showed them the money, they were totally fine with it. So how important, if this is about misusing Blackhawk's name and image and likeness, if it's about that, how strong were their actual principles on that when a little bit of money actually pushed them off of it? Now they're in support. I don't know. You tell me. Let's watch this video.
The Chicago Blackhawks franchise. But who's the real man behind it? CBS 2 investigator Dave Savini.
I want to tell you before we go into this, the reason we're watching this is because they're interviewing the granddaughter. And she says a lot of really dumb things throughout this interview and presents a lot of the same arguments that we'll hear from, I don't know, people that are on the left a lot of times. She also cries multiple times throughout the interview when talking about the history, which, so I don't cut in and talk about this, I think that's completely ridiculous, like crying about something that happened a couple hundred years ago, you know? You weren't directly connected to that. You've never been directly connected to that. You know what happened to my family back in that time? I'm asking right now, do you know? Because I don't care at all. I'm sorry. Why would I care about that? They're no closer to me than anyone else throughout history. Well, the fact that we share a little bit of DNA or whatever, no. That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't get it. Okay, here we go.
Tracked down a direct lineal descendant and great-granddaughter of Black Hawk, the legendary Native American war leader from Illinois. He traveled to Portland to meet her, and in an interview you will only see on 2, she's demanding the team stop using her ancestors' name and image.
We took our names from the natural world around us. The natural world's where we learn everything from.
With every brushstroke,
beautiful birds.
The hawk has a great meaning to April Holder's family.
These are intelligent creatures.
In fact, one of her great-grandfathers was named after a hawk, Black Hawk, the legendary war leader of the Sac and Fox Nation from Illinois. He'd be your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
But now she can no longer hold in her pain. She's denouncing one of the most successful franchises in the National Hockey League, the Chicago Blackhawks.
Let's it fly! Score! Yes, it is. It is identity theft. That's the contemporary term for it, right?
The family says this portrait of Black Hawk from 1833 is the most accurate portrayal of him. That's him on the right with his son. And nearly 2 centuries later, April says her ancestor is a victim of a modern-day crime.
If someone were to come and take your name and use it for something and profit off of it, what is that called? It's called identity theft.
April works as both an artist and an advocate for Native American rights. She says the team took Blackhawks' real identity and contorted it into this.
It's a stereotype. It's a generic stereotype depiction of a quote-unquote Indian, Native American.
Her family, Blackhawks' direct lineal descendants, say the logo is not only racist, it's also historically inaccurate.
To associate it with his name is to literally pick a specific person from my people's history and dehumanize them and reduce them to what, a cartoon?
They say they're honoring him by putting that logo on those jerseys.
I'm going to dispute their definition of honor. Because that's not it. That's not how you honor people.
Decades of public pressure led other teams to change their names and logos.
That to me is not honoring somebody. That to me is demeaning.
Like the Cleveland baseball team and the Washington football team. But the Chicago Blackhawks are standing firm in their decision to keep theirs.
Well, it's not okay to be racist. Just because Native Americans are a small demographic of the U.S. public doesn't mean we don't exist and we don't have feelings.
And nobody's contacted anyone in your family, direct lineal.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Not even after this statue outside the United Center was defaced in protest over the team's use of Blackhawk as a mascot in 2020.
I don't know who did it, but I'm proud of them.
She says Blackhawk was a man of courage and a diplomat.
He's very eloquent, well-spoken, and extremely intelligent.
A war leader who fought to prevent the United States from taking his tribe's land.
They massacred our people there.
She remembers visiting that land as a little girl with her mom and grandmother.
They massacred women and children there. But it's just a park now.
This is Blackhawk State Historic Site in Rock Island, Illinois. Blackhawk's family's photos, his direct lineage, hang in a museum here. This is a picture of April's grandmother.
I like how she's like, oh, it's just a park now. He's dead. What do you want? He's dead. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone in your family has a whole park and museum dedicated to them and a team dedicated to them? Good Lord. Okay, sorry.
Mother as a child. A family honor that came with a price.
2 years ago, we at the Chicago Blackhawks made a promise to step back, reflect, and reimagine our work and relationship with Native American people.
Instead of changing the logo, team CEO Danny Wirtz got to work doing damage control with Native American organizations.
One of the first things that became clear is our past efforts throughout the decades had fallen short. We had real work to do, and we had trust to earn and people to listen to.
Then came financial donations to Blackhawk's existing tribe, the Sac and Fox Nation, which was previously against the team's use of the logo.
The Blackhawks now have a partnership with the Sac and Fox Nation.
I wouldn't call it a partnership.
On paper, it is a partnership. Here's how it worked. Beginning in 2020, Wirtz paid Nina Sanders, a Native American consultant.
What does that mean? I wouldn't call that a partnership. It's literally a partnership. They signed a deal. They brought contracts. They signed it over. They could choose to remain principled and say that they need to get rid of this, or they could say, well, this money is more important. It's literally a partnership.
Consultant $14,000 a month to help the team improve their relationship with the community.
You told the team leadership of the Chicago Blackhawks that the logo has to go?
Yeah, and they still hired me. I told him that it was racist.
Initially, Nina says Wirtz told her he would change the logo, but after she set up a 2021 meeting with the tribe, all that changed. The tribal government then voted to approve the team's use of Blackhawk's name as a mascot. Soon after, the money and gifts started pouring in.
When these teams, these corporations seek out to do these types of things, to find their sellouts, they will look for people who are vulnerable to do that to.
Here's what we know. The team's charitable arm, the Chicago Blackhawks Foundation, sent at least $600,000 in cash and gifts to the tribe since 2021.
Do you believe the reason they went to visit the Sac and Fox Nation tribal government was to honor or to buy the right to continue to keep using?
I think it was to buy. There's no honor in what they're doing. It was to buy it.
Included in those gifts, this $220,000 decommissioned U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter, gifted to the tribe by Wirtz and the team's charity. Wirtz was there as it was placed as a monument on tribal land.
Oh, I see a total contradiction. He waged war against the U.S. government. He fought the cavalry. I think that hockey team has unethical practices. They did what's been done to Native people throughout history. They handpicked a few people and they persuaded them through unethical means.
I don't know how else she wants anyone to honor this guy who went by the name of Black Hawk. They should just say it's a different guy. Like, oh, it's not that guy. It's just a fictional. We heard some other guy went by Black Hawk also, so we'll do that. His actual tribe signed a deal because they decided that so far, what they've been paid since, what year was it, 2021, I think is what it said. I can't remember the year. $600,000 plus a helicopter as a monument, a Black Hawk helicopter, which is weird. I'll agree with that one. They would rather have the $600,000. And this lady right here is saying, no, it's better that they don't use the name and that Black Hawk's actual existing tribe doesn't get any of that money. And she's basically deciding to be better for that tribe to have no money than to be getting paid from it. It's completely ridiculous. And I think what's actually happening here is that she's trying to make some noise. And why is she trying to make some noise? Because she ain't in the tribe. And there's an actual tribe that's getting money. And here she is, a direct descendant of Black Hawk. And she would also like to get in on the money. I would be very interested in what would happen if they were to come to her and offer her $1 million, or $100,000 a year to shut the hell up. Do you think she wouldn't take it? Maybe at this point she wouldn't take it, but she'd be really stupid not to. And I think it's totally fine that we name teams after people in a way to honor them. She seems to have a lot of issues with the logo of the team. It is literally a cartoon logo. Okay, it's a sports logo. I don't think actually printing a picture of the guy and putting it on the uniforms is going to look quite as cool. Maybe present, like what Costco just said. Let's try and make it a little bit better. Maybe you don't like some of the accentuated features on the logo. Maybe it doesn't perfectly match the shape of his face. Well, let's make the same kind of logo that would actually look like a side profile of the actual Black Hawk, because apparently we have some paintings of him, I guess. And let's see. Let's see what that logo looks like. See if that's the actual problem. I don't know if it is or not. Number 8, this comes from Josh Ellis. I think Amanda posted this in the group. So Josh Ellis says, so let's imagine the scenario of how capitalism actually works, kids. You ready? I'm a pharma guy, and my company creates a drug that can save the lives of people who are going to die if they don't get it. It costs $5 per dose to make. My guys say we should sell it for $15,000 per dose. We'll keep moving on. We'll follow this chain of logic here. I can sell it for whatever price I want to because anything else is communist devilry. So I put it out on the market. You should be able to charge whatever you want to for it and see what the market says about that. Okay, but here's a strange problem. The disease it cures mainly seems to afflict poor and the uninsured people. So what do I do? See, he's got a market problem there. He's got a drug that cost him $5 to make. Apparently, there was no R&D involved with the drug whatsoever. Didn't have to pay for all the clinical trials and all that kind of stuff. It costs $5 to make. We just have to accept that. Now he can't sell it for $15K because it mostly affects poor people. He says, do I lower the price and sell it for, say, $10 a dose? No, because that would produce an insufficient profit to satisfy my shareholders and my board. Shareholders would never go for a 100% markup on something. Jeez. My fiduciary duty to them is my sole responsibility in this situation, aside from not breaking the law. And parentheses here says, even if that isn't true, I can break the law so long as the fines we pay for doing so are less than the profits we make for breaking the law in the first place. So what do I do here? You might think there's a dilemma, but there's no dilemma at all. Here's his answer. This is capitalism, folks. He stops making the drug. That's it, okay? He said, I stopped making the drug that can save people's lives, not because it isn't profitable to do so, but it's not profitable enough for my shareholders, whose wishes are of paramount importance legally and financially. If I say, to hell with you, I'm going to make it anyway and save lives and still make a profit, not only can I be fired, in theory, I could be sued for mismanaging their investment for them, and probably both will happen, right? By the way, your drug company that he's running probably doesn't only have one drug, and they would be happy to have a drug where they had 100% markup on it and actually only cost them $5 to make, that they apparently didn't have to put any R&D into whatsoever. Now, imagine that I'm one of the people with the disease this drug treats. Without it, I'm dead. I couldn't afford it at full price, and now they've discontinued marketing it, so I can't get it at any price. I'm going to die because someone's ROI was too low. What is my value proposition for not walking into that C-suite with an AR-15 and a pound of Semtex and demanding that they give or make me a lifetime supply of the drug, since I'm dead anyway if they don't? What? It'll disappoint Jesus? He'll forgive me? The answer is none. That's his value proposition there. If you have what I need and I'll die if I don't get it, and you refuse to sell it to me at the price I can afford, you're condemning me to death. The most moral and ethical choice here is to take it from you for free by any means necessary. Now your capitalism's not me. First off, he would also have to compel all the people that produce the drug to go and produce the drug also, and then compel the company to sell it to him. But this is a hostage negotiation here, so we'll assume he's going to come out on top here. Now, maybe the drug company will try to find a way to satisfy both their fiduciary duty to shareholders and their moral duty to their customers, but they don't have to. No one under current capitalism-controlled laws can make them. It's up to shareholders. You know, in capitalism, we have absolutely no cheap drugs that people that are poor can afford. In fact, you look out at people that are poor, they're just all dead. Any of them, whoever gets a disease, they just die. Or if they get something that could be treated by a drug whatsoever, they just die because drug companies never sell something that's affordable. He goes on to say, which is why compassionate capitalism is I'm just reading what he wrote here, okay? He says it's a horse to phrase as benevolent dictatorship. I'm not staking my life on some capitalist ethics for far safer if I'm betting with the highest stakes to compel him to give me what I need, not ask for it. If a company owns the water supply and cuts you off or charges you what you can't afford, why would it be wrong to cut into their pipeline and take what you need to survive? Because stealing is wrong? I'll pop that MFer like a keg of bud with a song on my lips. That's what he says there at the end.
And so this has been a long and complicated tweet thread, and now we're coming up against a hard break. All right? So when we get back, you'll hear my direct responses to this guy's idiotic view about pharmaceutical companies under capitalism. You can easily disprove the things that he's saying. We'll do that coming up.
According to a report released Monday, Americans currently lead the world in compressing big sandwiches into sufficiently biteable sizes, outranking countries such as Germany, Slovenia, and Ukraine in their sheer capacity to squeeze BLTs, meatball subs, and grinders into shapes that will easily and efficiently fit into their open mouths. Researchers pointed out that in series after series of tests, Americans consistently topped international rankings by implementing over 800 pounds per square inch of compressive force on sandwich categories as diverse as banh mi, croque monsieurs, or gyros, rarely hesitating for more than a moment before diving in and pushing the bread together and wedging it into their mouths.
Even in the cases in which Americans failed to sufficiently compress a sandwich and, say, dropped a stray piece of bacon or avocado, they still led the pack on quickly scooping up this topping with their hands and eating it, sometimes even inventively doing so with a stray potato chip or french fry.
This is the Onion News Network.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has outlined what he's called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan would allow around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the US. The administration says it will help keep families together rather than forcing them to leave America while their paperwork is processed. Biden detailed the plans at the White House.
It was about keeping families together. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, family's about the beginning, middle, and the end. About keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years. These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more, but living in the United States all this time with fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today.
The United States and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine as the US prepares to host the North Atlantic Alliance's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. next month. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a press conference with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, and in it he hailed the increase in defence spending by many of the Pact's countries. Ever since Benji Hire reports.
These meetings are all about laying the groundwork for July's summit here, the aim of which NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says is to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for the long haul at the cost to the alliance of at least $45 billion per year. Ukraine wants to join NATO. That's unlikely for now, whilst the war with Russia is ongoing. Still, Mr. Stoltenberg argues, the more credible NATO support for Ukraine, the quicker Russia, quote, would realise it cannot wait us out and the sooner this war can end. It may seem like a paradox, but, he claims, the path to peace is therefore more weapons.
Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. He's since been bailed and will appear in court next month. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank, as FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
During his address on Tuesday, the UN's Human Rights Chief said so far in the West Bank, 528 Palestinians had been killed by Israeli security forces and or settlers since October. He added that in many cases these raise serious concerns of unlawful killings. Volker Turk says at the same time 23 Israelis have been killed in the West Bank and Israel in clashes with Palestinians. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. If you are confused by the pace of political developments in France, you are not the only one. Campaigning in the country's election got underway on Monday, days after the surprise decision to call it by President Emmanuel Macron, in reaction to a surge by the far right in races earlier this month for the European Parliament. What is going on? Correspondent Peter Allen is in Paris.
We have a series of alleged alliances, extreme right, extreme left, lots of candidates, of course, in the middle as well. And the idea at the moment, to sum up, is that the left is trying to create a bloc, which means that only one leftist candidate, will stand in each constituency to oppose the far right in each of those constituencies. Meanwhile, the far right is trying to form an alliance with the centre right, which would be Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella's party on the far right, the National Rally, trying to pal up with the Gaullist Conservatives, who are now called the Republicans. That's not going very well at all. A lot of Gaullist Conservatives, including former President Nicolas Sarkozy, is saying that he doesn't want anything to do with the far right at all. So it really is absolutely chaotic over here.
And the first round of the election takes place on June the 30th, with the second round a week later. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has outlined what he's called a common-sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. The US and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine. Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested for driving while intoxicated, and the UN Human Rights Chief is warning of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank. There's more from us on X at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. According to a Stanford University study released Wednesday, there is no logical reason why planes are able to fly. Reiterating that they fully understand the concepts of lift, thrust, and propulsion, lead physicists told reporters they were still unable to reasonably explain how a large 500,000-pound object is capable of staying up in the air without falling.
We've come up with several theories, including wind propulsion, some sort of gravity suspension effect, also the possibility that the clouds pull the plane skyward, but beyond that, just don't understand how a large metal tube could just kind of float in the air like that. And it's going at like 500 miles per hour, which means that when I'm on a plane, I'm also going 500 miles per hour. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, why is my hair blowing back and forth?
The Stanford team added they plan to devote the next 2 years to a new study on why telephones can hear. In other news, an urban planner is stuck in traffic of his own design, and a kid screams behind a passenger during an entire plane crash. Visit theonion.com/newsbeat for more.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It's Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, and currently we are going through Dumb Bleep of the Week. Before we took that short break, we brought you a tweet thread, an X thread, about a pharma bro under capitalism and all the things that he said would happen because of capitalism. First off, I want to go back to where he says, I stopped making the drug. He says that this 100% profit on this drug is not enough for the shareholders. He says, so I'll just stop making the drug. I'm going to assume that he just didn't think to the next step. But the actual next step is not that the drug just doesn't exist. What actually happens there is that the company sells the patent to a smaller pharmaceutical company. And then the smaller pharmaceutical company will make the drug because they don't have these big mega drugs that they can charge $15K for either. And they're looking to get into the drug market. And this company still wants to make money off of this drug because they want to make money in any way that they can, especially when it's something as simple as just selling the patent to another company, which is something that happens quite often. And so if they actually have a drug that's valuable that people are going to pay for, that they can get 100% markup on, 100% profit off of it, they're going to sell the patent and another company is going to buy it up, and then that smaller company is going to make that drug. But under his form of capitalism, what happens is that apparently there are all of these drugs that people have created, that people need, that people are willing to pay 100% profit on, that these companies just don't make, and they just never exist. You sell it at the price that the market will bear. He throws out a $15,000 price tag. If the market won't pay $15,000 or people don't have insurance to pay for it, they're going to lower the price on the drug, and they're going to find somewhere that people will pay for it. If it's literally going to save your life, maybe you'll find a way to pay $50 for it. Maybe you'll pay $50 for the drug. Maybe you'll pay $100 for it. You're going to die if you don't get the drug. Someone else has risked years of research and development, which was apparently free, and put a lot of work into this to make this, and it's literally going to save your life, and it wouldn't have existed if they wouldn't have created it, because you didn't create and then you're going to die if you don't take it, would you find a way? Hear me out here. You cancel your cell phone plan for 2 months, and you take a drug that if you wouldn't have taken it, you would die. You get out your notebook and you do the math on that. And you say, well, it'd be better for me to not have a cell phone for a couple months, and maybe I'll cancel Netflix or something like that. I'll take a drug that's $100. Well, they only paid $5 for it. Now you're talking about a much bigger markup on this drug. Now this actual company is considering still continuing to make this drug, let alone all the other companies that would love to buy up the patent on a drug that they're going to be able to mark up 2,000% on something. They'll still be willing to do that as well. So, of course, all of this, when we talk about pharmaceuticals or the healthcare industry in general, things are too expensive. And that's the government's fault, and they're sorry. That's also the fault of everyone having insurance for everything. Insurance for routine maintenance shouldn't even exist because insurance is in case happens, not insurance for something I know for sure is going to happen. And when those third-party payers come in, they bid up the price because they are pooling the resources of thousands to millions of people, and they're able to pay a little bit higher price than everyone else is in the market. And then that leads people who don't have insurance for whatever reason to not be able to afford it because you're not competing against other people who are buying things. You're competing against an insurance company that can afford to pay for things. And so there's one really big problem there. Of course, I don't know how long it took this drug to come onto the market. It probably took it somewhere like 10 years, like most drugs, unless it's a vaccine that you're trying to force everyone in the world to take. It probably had a lot of time and money involved with bringing it to the market, and we would like to just decrease that as well. There's a lot of reasons all these drugs are very expensive, and we should actually tackle those things. By the way, basically none of those reasons have to do with capitalism, because capitalism doesn't actually mean that you use an organization that has the monopoly of the use of force to force people to do things, to force people to take money from others and use it to pay for things, which bids up the price on everything. And so, no, that's not what happens under capitalism. Under capitalism, first off, this gets sold to a smaller company who buys up the patent and they make the drug because they're more than happy to sell this drug at a price that people can afford, if that's what exists. Okay, that's number 8. Let's see, where are we at? 54 minutes right now. I could make fun of Josh Eckel real quick. Well, I'll put like a 4-minute time frame on this. I don't know what happened to Josh. He used to be a pretty libertarian guy. There's something about Donald Trump that so many people have bought into. That hatred for Donald Trump overtakes every single other thing that occurs in a person's brain. Scientists have been studying this now for a few years, and they came up with a name for it. It's called Trump derangement syndrome. There are a lot of people that are afflicted with this disease. And I'm not saying that we should mandate they get vaccines or anything, but there's something going on here. When it comes to a choice between Trump or Biden, there are many negatives to both of those. But there are some positives, sometimes, a little bit, with Trump. And I can't personally name any positives when it comes to Biden. And maybe that's how I think about this whole thing. Like, they both have a lot of negatives. A lot of their negatives are the same. But I can't come up with any positives for Joe Biden from a libertarian point of view. I can't come up with anything. If someone can give me, like, I actually want to know. I would love to say, like, oh yeah, that. No, I'm saying from an actual libertarian, like, philosophy point of view. He did dodge the draft. I don't know if that was out of principle or just, trying to save his own life. Probably just trying to save his own life when it comes to that, not because he was against the draft. I like people who have the self-confidence to poo themselves on stage. It takes a big man to do that kind of thing. Anyhow, somehow people have so much hatred for Trump that it shuts their brain off. And I'm not exactly sure what it is. Josh says the Biden administration actually did a better job of delivering on Trump's promises than Trump did. Look at Biden's results 3 years in. So this former libertarian, Josh, he was a super nice guy when you meet him in person. Okay, I'll give him that. Not only is he not just talking bad about Trump and the negative things that Trump has done, he's now giving props to Biden. Because now the hatred for Trump is not just a hatred for Trump, but it's turned into a love for Biden. And maybe not a full love, but Biden's not Trump, and therefore there's a little bit of love there, okay? Here's what he lists off. Record low unemployment, historic manufacturing boom, energy independence. The U.S. is once again exporting energy like they were when Trump was president. The war in Afghanistan has ended. Stock market at a record high. Reduction of the Trump-era inflation spike. He reopened the economy after COVID, and he got 70% of Americans vaccinated. We can go line by line, hit a few of these things. Okay, record low unemployment. Right now it's at 4%, okay, but it did go down to record lows as long as you don't go to what the record low is. Just keep that in mind. It's record low unemployment as long as you don't count what the record low unemployment number is. It's a very important thing to do. Neither Trump or Biden actually broke the record on low unemployment. That was broken in 1953 at an unemployment rate of 2.5%. Trump's number got down to 3.5% before COVID. Biden got his numbers down. Get this. Here's how much better it got down to. 3.4%, which was last hit in 1968. Trump's unemployment number was last hit in 1969 before that. So Biden was able to reach back into history record books one more year than Trump was. I hate it when people say record things when it's not the record, but whatever. How about the manufacturing boom? You can go back to several episodes where we talk about, it's not fair to count the COVID thing not because Trump didn't have any blame, but because if a Democrat would have been in office, it's not as though they would not have aided in shutting down the economy. It's not as though we would have had less lockdowns or less people out of work. That's all you have to agree on. I'm not saying that Trump did nothing wrong. I'm saying, are you telling me that a Democrat would have been against shutting down the economy? Would that have been the case? No, would not have been at all. How about manufacturing jobs? We'll just look at that. During Trump's presidency, he added 414,000 manufacturing jobs up to the COVID crash. We're not counting it because either a Republican or Democrat would have had roughly the same results during this time. I would argue that Democrats would have wanted more lockdowns, that they would have actually used the federal government more to impose lockdowns on certain states. But we don't know that for sure. So since 2019, the manufacturing jobs have gone up by 185,000 since our 2019 number. Now, what people are counting is since COVID, since that crash, Biden would tell you that he's had 770,000 manufacturing jobs added. All but 185,000 of those would roughly be jobs that were recovered from people who weren't allowed to go to work. And so the actual increase from 2019 is 185,000 jobs. That's an increase of 1.45% compared to an increase of 3.35% under Trump before COVID. Okay. The Trump era inflation boom or inflation spike. So this is another one that will be nuanced on it. Okay. Trump signed the CARES Act, which was a $2.2 trillion bill that put a lot of money into the economy and had a lot to do with the inflation that we had. Now, we didn't get the inflation much while Trump was president. One of those reasons being that the economy was still mostly locked down at that point. This inflation was going to happen. Even if Trump would have stayed in office, this inflation was going to happen because you're going from a time where people weren't conducting any commerce or commerce was way, way down from what it was previously. Therefore, the inflation rate went down to zero, actually went negative there for a minute. When you went back to having a normal amount of commerce, you were going to get inflation. Now, what did Biden come in and do? He threw gasoline on the fire. You could say Trump started a fire, and then Biden came in with a 5-gallon bucket full of gasoline and dumped it on there with the American Rescue Plan, giving people a bunch of stimulus checks at a time that it really was not necessary at all. And of course, we don't agree with all the stuff that happened under Trump either. But when you say Trump era inflation spike, that kind of sounds like inflation spiked while Trump was in office, and we got the raw data on that, when it's not the case. It was like 1.4% when Trump left office. Record highs in the stock market. Now, we've talked about how if you do an inflation-adjusted stock market, which is important because you're looking at the value of your money that you've invested in the market when you take it out to live on it. Sure, the market went up by 20%, but what if there was 20% inflation during that time? So did you actually gain any money? I'll make a separate point on top of this. Record high stock markets occurred. Yes, under Biden's presidency, we have hit record highs. Under Trump's presidency, the stock market hit record highs. Under Obama's presidency, the stock market hit record highs. Under George W. Bush's presidency, the stock market hit record highs before the housing crash. But we haven't finished Biden's term either, so we don't know if there's going to be some kind of crash or whatever. Under Bill Clinton's presidency, we had record high stock markets. Under George H.W. Bush's presidency, we had record high stock markets. Under Ronald Reagan's presidency, we had record high stock markets. What's the moral of the story right now? The stock market essentially always goes up. Investment advice for you. There is no 20-year span of time where you could have invested money and not have more money when you took it out after 20 years. Even if you started your investments right before the Great Depression, you kept it in for 20 years, you were still going to be in the positive afterwards. Investing in the stock market long term, it's as close to 100% guarantee kind of thing as you could have. Let's move on to Dumb Bleat number 10 because it's video and it's going to be fun. This video on YouTube is called Proof That Stalin and Mao were libertarians.
To not understand how Mao wanted cheap, efficient, and limited government, Mao, who literally empowered the Chinese masses to literally set up their own local institutions of governance, administration.
Efficient, limited government is when you're an authoritarian dictator who sends people out to murder all the other people that are in government. And what you're actually striving for is this libertarian form of efficient, limited government, a government that works quickly and swiftly, because you killed everyone else and you want to be an authoritarian.
Mao was the guy whose little red books were distributed forms of sovereign authority. Any idiot peasant could wield a red book and literally be the equal of any party boss in their local town. Nobody in China was experiencing tyranny from Mao except the people who were in power all the way in Beijing. If you're a local peasant, the average person in China...
Nobody in China was experiencing tyranny from Mao. So the Red Guard didn't go around interrogating also the populace and murdering people, older people, people who succumb to the bourgeois ideas.
And Mao, with his Cultural Revolution, empowered peasants to literally, it's literally like a Ron Paul audit the government, challenge the government. That's what the Cultural Revolution was. Now, in the case of Stalin, you may be so stupid that you go around using the name Stalin without understanding the crucial context, like the 1936 Stalin Constitution, which was the most democratic constitution in the history of humanity. And yes, at every opportunity and chance he got, he wanted to severely limit the scope of government and establish a cheap, efficient, simple government. The collective form was a civil economic institution, not a state one. It wasn't exactly private property under a classical capitalism, but it was not state property. These were collective farms owned by the people working on them. You may think the idea of a collective farm is scary, whatever. This is perfectly in continuity with Russian civilization.
Russian culture, didn't have a lot of private property ownership, I guess. So, yeah, the state mandated collective farming. And by the way, you had to do the collective farming and you had to keep up with the quotas, or the state would kill you.
The collective farm was a new, in Stalin's view, socialist form of civil property. The collective farms had contractual obligations to the state in the form of quotas, but all excesses to the quotas could be sold on the market. And they could do whatever they wanted with them pretty much.
I like how he says they could do whatever they wanted with them pretty much. What's the pretty much? Oh, first off, there weren't any excesses because this was a stupid system. And second, they set the prices anyway. You weren't allowed to sell them at whatever prices the market would actually bear. And then later, they don't even give them money for the actual grain. They give them machinery in exchange for the grain so they can make more grain.
The product of collective farming: grain, meat, butters, vegetables, cotton, sugar, beet, flax, all things that get to be freely sold in a free market on the collective farm markets, the Colcos markets. So you're saying, well, the collective farm doesn't own all these other things, the state does.
State mandated pricing.
All that means is they can't sell the land. They can't buy and sell the land, which is the good thing, because speculation on land, which the buying and selling of land eventually leads to, monopolies, debt, banking monopolies, things libertarians don't like. But as far as the fundamentals of a libertarian economy, where people own their own products of their labor and get to do whatever they want.
As most libertarians know, we can't have privatized ownership of land. Libertarians universally against private ownership because it's speculation, and speculation, of course, leads to monopolies, and monopolies lead to hate, and hate leads to suffering.
Stalin gives them way more freedom. You have more freedom when the land is public. You have more freedom when the instruments of production are public, depending on which instruments. I mean, there's a range of what that means. In China, it's just the land.
There's a range of what that means. What's the range?
Instruments are not public property, for example.
You're making a streamlined, limited government where it is limited to whatever you tell everyone to do or you'll kill them. Basically, a Ron Paul revolution, if I've ever heard it in my whole life.
Strong means simple, clean, and to the task. Stalin, relative to his contemporaries, was a libertarian. He wanted to strengthen the civil institutions of the people at the expense of the centralizing state institutions. Stalin, at every turn, wanted to give power to the people. Now, Stalin failed. Stalin failed because he didn't purge enough. That's why after Stalin's death, Khrushchev comes.
I hate it when you forget to kill enough people. Man, gets me every time.
Task is to extend these rudiments of product exchange to all branches of agriculture and develop them into a broad system, under which the collective farms would receive for their products not only money, but also manufacturers they need. Holy... This is kind of like the Hamiltonian system that the LaRouche people always want to talk about. You know what's so insane about Stalin's proposal? He's saying we want to incentivize surpluses of production. In return of peasants selling their surpluses to the state, not only are they going to get money, which, I mean, can the state really compete with the market price? Probably not. So how does Stalin propose to overcome the market economy? Use the state to...
We've made it into the point where these collectivized farmers can't sell their stuff on the market anymore. They got to sell their excesses to the state because this was so terrible and people were starving to death. Millions of them. Now they're going to sell it to the state. But he's saying, well, not only are they going to give money, but they're also going to get equipment. In fact, not only did they not get money, they just got equipment. And of course, the state couldn't compete with the actual market price. That's why they made the market price illegal. Oh, just mandated that you worked under threat of death. In exchange, they would give you more tools to work under threat of death.
Exchange the products that come from the collective farms for manufacturers and instruments of production. In other words, technology that overall increases the forces of production. The state invests in the technology and it's up to the people to make the profit. And they have an incentive. And it's not based in force. It's based in an exchange. He literally calls it products exchange. Stalin is a libertarian for all intents and purposes.
Okay. Let's start getting the Let's start getting the votes in. I think I'd said enough of my piece during the video. That's great. It's so much more fun to watch it with friends and watch all the comments come in. You want to join the Fed Haters Club, join gmail.com. Let's go to the voting channel. Number 1 was Lindsey Graham on Ukraine. Number 2 was the LGBTQIA2SL plus murals. Number 3 was DeSantis migration. Number 4 was the draft dodger, Donald Trump. Number 5, the cancer charity. Number 6, the feminist music. Number 7, Black Hawk. Number 8, the threat on capitalism and the pharma bro. Number 9 was Josh Eckel posting Biden's wins. And number 10 was Stalin and Mao, of course, actually being libertarians.
It looks like we are not going to need to do a recount on this because the runaway vote is the idea that Stalin and Mao are libertarians. Shocker, big surprise. I'm sure no one knew that that's what was going to win. I think this one is a contender that might make it all the way to Dumb Bleep of the Year at the end of the year. That was completely ridiculous. If you want to get your submissions in for Dumb Bleep of the Week, go to joingml.com so you can join the Fed Haters Club and you can vote alongside your other Fed-hating friends.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has outlined what he's called a common sense fix to give undocumented immigrants legal status in the United States. His plan would allow around 500,000 people living in the US illegally who are married to US citizens the chance to apply for green cards without leaving the US. The administration says it will help keep families together rather than forcing them to leave America while their paperwork is processed. Biden detailed the plans at the White House.
It was about keeping families together. My dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, family's about the beginning, middle, and the end. About keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years. These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more, but living in the United States all this time with this fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today.
The United States and NATO are reaffirming the West's commitment to Ukraine as the US prepares to host the North Atlantic Alliance's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. next month. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a press conference with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday, and in it he hailed the increase in defence spending by many of the Pact's countries. Eversense Benji Hire reports.
These meetings are all about laying the groundwork for July's summit here, the aim of which NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says is to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for the long haul at the cost to the alliance of at least $45 billion per year. Ukraine wants to join NATO. That's unlikely for now, whilst the war with Russia is ongoing. Still, Mr. Stoltenberg argues, the more credible NATO support for Ukraine, the quicker Russia, quote, would realise it cannot wait us out and the sooner this war can end. It may seem like a paradox, but, he claims, the path to peace is therefore more weapons.
Pop star Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. The incident happened near the Hamptons on Long Island in New York. He's since been bailed and will appear in court next month. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of a dramatically deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank, as FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
During his address on Tuesday, the UN's Human Rights Chief said so far in the West Bank, 528 Palestinians had been killed by Israeli security forces and or settlers since October. He added that in many cases these raise serious concerns of unlawful killings. Volker Turk says at the same time 23 Israelis have been killed in the West Bank and Israel in clashes with Palestinians. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Ivan, if people don't know, why don't you give them a little short introduction? Because I know we're going to talk about some great stuff. They might want to know your background just a little bit.
Yeah, if you want the deep dive, you can go to watch the Tucker interview that I did on my Rumble. But just kind of in short, I'd say that I am professionally, 25 years, have been in the system as a Green Beret intelligence officer, military diplomat, as well as an intelligence officer. My last kind of stint within the Department of Defense was as an instructor at the Defense Intelligence Agency, where I taught intelligence analysis, intel support to multinational operations, and then a week-long course specifically going into all of the 17 intel agencies, as well as the director of Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So I pretty much know the national security system pretty well, a quarter of a century in it, taught others about it, to then become professional intel analysts to be able to conduct analytic pieces of analysis for the broader intelligence community. And then I also picked up a law degree to focus in on national security law and constitutional law. And when I observed the illegally conducted election in 2020 that was begun by the Fauci-funded CCP-19 lab incident that forced 39 states to conduct their elections not according to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, meaning in the manner in which the state legislatures wanted that election to take place. That's when I sprung into action to stop fighting our foreign enemies to the constitutional order and focusing my attention on those that participated in making and stopping them from violating certain components of our Constitution. Again, the domestic enemies, violating Article 1, Section 4, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, the 12th Amendment when it came down to January 6th, where Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi refused to allow a quorum to take place on January 6th, again, because they said, due to the Fauci-funded CCP-19, only 11 members of Democrats, Republicans on the House side, and same thing on the Senate side, were allowed to be on the House floor to conduct the joint session, not meeting the requisite 12th Amendment threshold, 2/3 of the state delegations being represented in the House, nor the 2/3 of the senators present on the Senate side of that joint session. But I go into a little bit, maybe too much detail, but if you want me to go into more detail to expose the deep state by name, date, place, and transgression, I'm your guy to provide you the PhD level kind of analysis and production of evidence so that people know who these people are, so that we can then know which enemies that we need to target.
Who is actually running the country?
The people that are publicly facing are not really the ones that are kind of have the most influence in this entire conversations. I think there was one episode that Joe Rogan finally kind of he expressed that, somebody asked him, I'd really like to interview at some point, he said Donald Trump, because he would ask questions such as, who is the deep state? Who's really behind it? And honestly speaking, while President Trump did not quite know who that deep state was in the first couple of years of his term, I think after 4 years and now 4 years of observing who those scum are and realizing that I think he made a mistake when he allowed Mike Pence to convince him to fire General Flynn, he's starting to learn, and I think America's starting to learn, that the same individuals of the deep state, if you will, that went after General Flynn, Carter Page, with the illegal defrauding of the FISA court to then pierce the veil of that, through the FISA process of the whole Trump campaign, whether it's George Papadopoulos or Paul Manafort, the same individuals behind that Crossfire Hurricane illegal spying operation were then later the same people that were involved in the censorship industrial complex that censored Tulsi Gabbard during her presidential race, that censored RFK Jr., even still to this day, right? But obviously Elon Musk purchasing X was able to kind of off-gas some of that censorship, but it's still taking place with some of the surrogate organizations of the FBI, such as Meta, formerly Facebook, right? Or CommiTube, or Instagarbage, or any of these other platforms that find it necessary to go ahead and kneel down and smile like a donut, if you will, to the proverbial FBI.
So of all these things that we mentioned, which one of these things is the most important that people should know about?
When you look at all of the disclosures that took place in the General Flynn trial, 250 plus filings and documents, and all the disclosures, the text messages that were released between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, and when you look at the testimony conducted by before the Senate Judiciary Committee, when you look at all, I'm not going to go through. If I were to give you the list of all the evidence that I've looked through, it would probably take me at least 2 to 3 hours just to talk about the evidence that I've put together over probably 20,000 hours of life experience, having a first or second row seat to this, to the deep state activities going back to 2014. You don't know this, but I served on the Ukraine crisis team in the Pentagon in the National Military Command Center. When General Flynn was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, I was one of the lead analysts on the Ukraine crisis team. So aside from that, in my personal time, I was also observing what was going on. So looking at that from that perspective and knowing the names, the John Brennans, etc., I can step you through kind of going back to 2010. And you want some details. So after General Flynn, let me go back. 2014, General Flynn testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee. And he testified that, guess what? ISIS is not a JV team. Well, what happened to him after he said that and brought receipts to explain that away? John Brennan, who was the CIA director, Jim Clapper, the DNI, director of DNI, as well as Christopher Ray Epps, or excuse me, not Christopher Ray Epps, but Jim Comey was the FBI director at the time, basically brought it up to Barry Hussein that you need to go ahead and release this guy. So he was resigned in 2014, then became an advisor to several candidates for president, to include Donald Trump. And then when he came in and was seen as the most trusted close advisor to President Trump, when the Republican establishment saw that, it was problematic for them because Donald Trump was not leveraged by, or the Republican Party had no influence over Donald Trump. But at the same time, he only secured 1/3 of the votes. 2/3 of the votes were non-Trump, meaning represented by the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, the Chair of the RNC, and the Chair of the Republican Governors Association. Well, who are those four people? Reince Priebus, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and Mike Pence. So do you know that General Flynn was one of the four candidates that was being vetted for VP for Trump back in 2016?
No, I didn't know that.
And the other three were Mike Pence, obviously, Newt Gingrich, and Chris Christie, okay? Chris Christie's lawyer during his Bridgegate scandal in New Jersey was a guy by the name of Chris Wray, a former partner at King & Spalding. Another former partner at King & Spalding is a lady by the name of Sally Yates. Sally Yates then becomes what? I'm setting forth the relationship so you can create your own conclusions, but let's move forward. So as that's taking place, while the conversation is being had for Trump to nominate his VP pick, you think that the Republican establishment wants a second person in the White House to be basically a non-Republican outsider? Because General Flynn was a registered Democrat going into the White House as a national security advisor. To understand the deep state and all the tyrannical activities that have taken place to all of us, whether it was COVID-Con, whether it was a censorship industrial complex, right? Any friction point, it all goes back to the same individuals that were involved in that are all the same individuals that went after General Flynn to protect themselves from exposure, because General Flynn was the first person in any sort of political orbit that knew the system well enough to know exactly who did what, where the bodies were buried, who buried the bodies, and if he didn't know that, he would know who to ask and what questions to ask to identify who, what, when, where, why, and how those bodies were buried. That's why he was an existential threat to both political party leadership. And I just discussed just the Republican side of it. Pence, Christie, Gingrich, Paul Ryan, Reince Priebus, right? So when you see that first friction that was happening in the first kind of weeks and months of the Trump presidency, it was literally the RNC trying to take over those that were in the Trump camp that were the America First or constitutionally minded patriots. First one, Flynn. Who went next? Your Steve Bannons of the world, right? Et cetera, et cetera. They pushed out the Roger Stones of the world, right? I'm only discussing in the run-up to the July convention in 2016. So they were able to stop and block Flynn from being Trump's VP pick. They placed Pence in there. And then what happens within 2 weeks of Trump meeting Pence for the first time and nominating him as VP? They launched Crossfire Hurricane, the spying operation on the Trump campaign. Most people don't remember that before Pence was the governor, he spent 12 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. 10 of those 12 years, he was on the Judiciary Committee. During his freshman term, he was the one, and you can see this on C-SPAN. If you go back historically, he does his chest out. Oh, I am Mike Pence, the old pious one, and I'm the one that's promoting the Patriot Act and creating the Department of Homeland Security. Look it up. He says it in his own words on cspan.org. He was on the committee, judiciary, that passed the Patriot Act, expanding the FISA court from 7 judges, because that's what was in existence during the FISA Act from 1978 to 2002, when it was, or 2001, 2002 timeframe, when they expanded the FISA court from 7 to 11. Thank you, Mike Pence, okay? So then, if you're on the Judiciary Committee, don't you have oversight over the judicial component of the executive branch, meaning the DOJ, the FBI? And is it possible that Mike Pence and his staff, Nick Ayers, Josh Pitcock, you know these names?
No, I don't. I'm learning all this right now. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, so like I said, I can give you the PhD level district. I have a deep state target list consisting of over 350 individuals that I guarantee consequences.
Are you scared about talking about these things at all for your life?
They need to be scared of me.
Okay.
It doesn't, like, that doesn't work with me, okay?
All right.
You should be concerned for their safety. Okay?
Oh, I don't care about their safety.
So let's continue. Who should be concerned with their safety? Because we're coming for them? Wait, did I just mention Mike Pence's chief of staff? You know who Mike Pence's chief of staff was in the early days in January of 2017 when he became president? Or excuse me, Vice President Mike Pence? Josh Pitcock. Guess who he was married to and still is? Catherine Seaman. You know that Catherine Seaman worked for Peter Strzok as the lead Russia analyst during the Russia hoax?
God.
So you're telling me that Peter Strzok, one of the 2 individuals the FBI sent to get General Flynn fired or to get him to lie, according to the notes of the Deputy Assistant Director for Counterintelligence of the FBI, Bill Priestap is his name, in the notes that were disclosed through Brady requests through Judge Sullivan in the Flynn case. So the Deputy Assistant Director in his notes says, are we to go after Flynn to get him fired or to get him to lie? So you're telling me if the Deputy Assistant Director is working with Jim Comey, the director, and Andy McCabe, the Deputy Director, to send Peter Strzok and Joe Pientka to then perform that getting him to lie or to get him fired with that January 24th, 2017 meeting with General Flynn, and Peter Strzok's lead Russia analyst is Mike Pence's chief of staff wife, you're telling me Mike Pence knew nothing about it? And the way to prove that beyond any reasonable doubt or any doubt at all is to have Mike Pence's communications completely disclosed. Josh Pitcock's communications completely disclosed. His wife Catherine Seaman's communications completely disclosed, and Peter Strzok. But guess what? The original form that Peter Strzok and Joe Pientka, the second agent that was deployed after General Flynn to do that, getting him to lie or to get him fired, the original form of the notes of that interview is not anywhere to be seen because the junior officer in that relationship of Peter Strzok and Joe Pientka said under oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee when Lindsey Graham was the chair that he didn't think that General Flynn was lying. But guess what happened? Because you're supposed to write that form 5 days after. That thing's nowhere to be seen. And then by August of 2017, good old Deputy Director McCabe's senior lawyer, Lisa Page, through text messages disclosures, is now communicating with her friend, you know the relationship, right? Peter Strzok, so that he changes the original 302, the form, so that it makes it sound like General Flynn is lying. And then they use that to then take it to coerce General Flynn into a guilty plea with the newly formed Mueller team with an unlimited budget to basically confront General Flynn to say, hey, General, if you plead guilty, we won't go after your son. If you don't plead guilty, we're going to deploy our unlimited resources and budget to go after your son, who just had a newly born son himself, until we find a crime. And oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and charge you in a DC court with the DC jury that 97% of them hate you. So you need to go ahead and plead that you lied to the FBI during that interview because we just doctored the notes saying that you did. Meanwhile, Flynn was never charged. He was never convicted, and when this was all, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying was disclosed by Sidney Powell, his attorney, the DOJ was forced to drop the charges because it kind of implicates themselves, the FBI, and then the DOJ drops the charge of lying to the FBI of General Flynn, but guess what the judge does? He doesn't allow it. He does not allow the case to be dismissed against General Flynn, and instead, General Flynn has to appeal it. The appeals court directs the judge to drop the case because there's no option. There's no prosecution. They're not pursuing the charges. And then what? The judge himself appeals himself, forcing and playing out the clock so that President Trump decides to do what's known as a pardon of innocence. Flynn was never charged, never convicted, never spent a second in jail, but yet the entire process tried to make you think that he was the biggest traitor in the history of humanity. Why? Because Andy McCabe was saying that on MSLSD. John Brennan was saying that on Criminal News Network. And your beloved Paul Ryan from Faux News, board member of Faux News, was making sure that Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham would not disclose the Republican side's involvement in making it look like General Flynn was the biggest traitor in the history of humanity. And guess what now happens? We now go after them.
What can
I would
Trump
be
do
concerned
about
for
this,
their
by the way?
safety.
I'm a libertarian, and we say, well, Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, and he didn't drain the
He
swamp.
couldn't
These
because
people are
they
still
went
here.
after General Flynn.
So what does he
first
do?
and foremost?
What does he do now differently this time to make sure that this doesn't happen?
I think you need to answer the question first.
Which question?
Who do you think he needs to bring in to guarantee maximum consequences for the 350 individuals plus that are on my deep state target list? And many of them are the same individuals that went after General Flynn so that President Trump could not drain the swamp.
Is he going to bring in General Flynn?
You tell me. Would you think that that's a pretty good
I would say that'd be a pretty good move. Yeah. Yeah, I
you
think that'd be a pretty
that
good move.
General Flynn has the knowledge, expertise, and now the passion to create consequences for those that went after him?
You know, the media, they talk
What do
about
you
how
think?
this is a big revenge campaign for Trump. But
I call it retribution.
Right now, it sounds more like justice. Is what
some
you're
people
talking
call
about.
it accountability. Some people call it justice. My last name's Raiklen. I like to use the term retribution. And when you look up a lot of people have some sort of a negative connotation to that. It's not. It's creating maximum justice where it's appropriate. And again, it's not. A revenge campaign would just be a complete, how you use a shotgun, just pray and spray. This is a very methodical, surgical application of ice pick level force to the maximum to root out the cancer that is destroying our constitutional order. And once that's done, libertarians will be absolutely fascinated with the results. Because guess what? Our First Amendment comes back fully. Our Fourth Amendment is no longer violated, meaning illegal searches and seizures. Our Fifth Amendment due process then comes into play. I expect the maximum level of due process to take place in the most peaceful, patriotic manner that these people have ever experienced in their lifetimes. I expect an equal application of the law, where all 350 of these folks are going to experience the precedent that has already been set. Remember what Criminal News Network did as they conducted the live stream swatting raid of Roger Stone? I expect to see that to all 350 of them. Remember when they kidnapped Roger Stone? I expect to see the same thing. What about when John Eastman, Scott Perry, Congressman Perry, Peter Navarro? Peter Navarro was another victim of kidnapping at the hands of these 350. Remember Andrew Weissman? I remember you, bud. You better look out for yourself, sir. He's also on MSLSD. So those that platform these domestic terrorists, they're going to have to be dealt with as well.
I like that you call them domestic terrorists because they're a lot closer to the domestic terrorists than who are called domestic terrorists right now, which are a lot of people who care about the Constitution.
Yeah. They're calling those that conducted peaceful, unarmed First Amendment activity on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, something of which they are. And I want to close with this real quick. General Flynn, myself, Michael Flynn Jr., Jesse Banal, who was who was the lead local counsel for him, and Scott Wiper, the executive producer for that movie. We're putting together about a 1-hour documentary just on the General Flynn weaponization component. But you'll see the whole story arc leads us to the illegally conducted election, and then the illegal certification, and then its cover-up. Guess who the deep state uniparty cabal decided to go ahead and appoint as the staff director for that for what I call Mike Pence's beloved Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi's beloved Benny Thompson January 6th cover-up committee. The staff director was David Buckley. David Buckley was one of the 51 spies who lied, saying that the that the Biden criminal syndicate laptop had all the earmarks of a Russian info op, right? David Buckley was the inspector general for your beloved CIA director, John Brennan. Before that, he was the staff director for the Democrat side of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. I have a dossier on every single one of these scum by name, date, place, and transgression. And this guy, David Buckley, was the one that was tasked to conduct the Patriot target list. Now it's my turn to create the deep state target list, and we're about to action that deep state target list. David Buckley, you're on it. Every single person involved in COVID Con, you are on it, to include, I'm a retired Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel. Lloyd Austin is on it. Mark Milley is on that list. And there are dozens of other general and flag officers that are on that deep state target list because they illegally, or at a minimum, were duped by the Brian Auten, Laura Demlow, right? The Paul Ryans, the Andy McCabe's, and the Jim Comey's through their disinformation purveyors in New York, Atlanta, and then through their disinformation purveyors in Nancy Pelosi's congressional district in her backyard, through big tech, to say, hey, this thing's safe and effective. This thing is FDA approved. Meanwhile, that's not right. That's not true. So these DOD failures, some people pronounce leaders, they actually conducted a complete violation. Informed consent, none. Nuremberg Code violated, right? Informed consent violated. They mutilated the DNA of hundreds of thousands of military service members, which resulted in some cases the death. The DNA mutilation resulted in myocarditis, heart explosions, and deaths. Basically, they were involved in the biggest atrophy of our military readiness and our national security readiness that we've ever seen in this country's history. These are genocidal maniacs that deserve, at a minimum, the same consequences that were done to Roger Stone, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon. How many times did they swat him? These domestic terrorists need to be treated as such, with maximum consequences, not to include, you know how people say up to and including? It's not up to. It's literally one standard. I'm only going after those that conducted treason, and the maximum punishment for that, everyone knows what it is, and it's written in the Constitution. And there are way more than 2 witnesses to meet that threshold.
All right, Ivan Raiklin, the deep state marauder. Thanks so much for coming on the show this week. By the way, guys, you can find him on X at Ivan Raiklin. That's RAIKLIN, Ivan Raiklin. Or you can go to Raiklin.com. Hopefully you guys learned a lot of stuff during that, because I know I did. Even though I already forgot everyone's names. I don't know how people remember that kind of stuff. We'll see you guys again next Tuesday on Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting